Good evening, and I want to call the meeting to order. I'd like to advise everyone that this meeting is being recorded. If there's anyone else in attendance that's recording this meeting, there being none, if you'll join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight, under special recognitions, I'd like to take a moment. Since our last meeting, we all are aware of the terrible tragedy that happened in Boston with the bombing of the marathon. And I'd like us to reflect and remember and keep in our thoughts and prayers all those that were injured in this tragedy, the first responders and volunteers, and the families of all those affected. And really to recognize MIT police officer Sean Collier, Lindsay Liu, a Boston University student, Crystal Campbell, a 2001 graduate of Medford High School, and Martin Richard, an 8-year-old student that lives in Dorchester, Mass. I'd like to now take a moment of silence in remembrance of them. Thank you. And moving on to special recognitions.
Yes, thank you. We've had a number of great recognitions from across the schools this year, but some in particular with our art department. So there are a couple additional ones to share. Renee Fleming actually was selected by the Worcester Art Museum to participate in Art All-State this year, which is quite an honor to do. And then also there were a number of students from Auburn High Art in the Auburn Cultural Council's Art for the Arts show and sale, those being Renee Fleming as well, Ashley Bakunis, Emily Usher, and Dominic Joes. So I certainly want to congratulate all of them and wish good luck to those 5 students just mentioned as they continue in their art enthusiasm.
I'll now move on to the regular session minutes of April 10th, 2013.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous vote. Our student representatives are not in attendance tonight. The early start may have affected that. I'd like to now ask Representative Frost. He couldn't make the last meeting where we invited our state reps to give us a brief update on the status of our budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the school committee, Dr. Brunell. I'm a little nervous with all these principals in the room here. I don't think I've seen that many principals in one room ever in my school career anyway, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. When you had this meeting a few weeks ago, I know the senator was able to join you, and I had to attend, or was I had 2 daughters and who were in the music program and had a concert that very evening at the high school, and so I was attending that, and I thought that was a wonderful performance by all the different grades, and specifically I think the high school, which they did a song apparently which is one of the most difficult songs or things you can do, and that was the Godzilla versus Vegas. And it was absolutely incredible. So I think if anybody who has not heard it should try to hear that and hear our high school band do that, because it was exceptional. Since you last met, and I did send a letter, and I know that the letter was read during the meeting, so I won't go everything over in that letter again. But since then, the House did release its budget, which I had talked about in the letter. The House has since debated its budget, which was last week, and then pass it on to the Senate. The House Ways and Means numbers that were presented to you in my letter have not changed going through the budget. There were several attempts last week through several amendments, one of them being mine, to increase funding for schools that failed. One was an increase of more money to Chapter 70, which I did vote for. And I offered an amendment, which I had talked to Superintendent Brunell about at Community Reading Day a few weeks back, about an idea I've had and have offered in the past, but brought it back up, in which it was and I put it forward as an amendment, and we had a vote on it. Unfortunately, it did not pass, but that was seek to provide at least $20 for every student in the Commonwealth, and we distributed to each school district on a per pupil basis, and that would be able to be used towards learning materials, school equipment. We get a school equipment grant. You know, I know Chairman Laurie is familiar with police and fire grants over the years that have been awarded and offered, and I think we should offer something very similar to that to our schools, and allow them. I mean, when you sometimes see a high school textbook that still has Pluto as a planet, you know, you realize that maybe some areas and some things need to be updated, and you know, many times, you know, parents are asked to help out with providing school materials, whether it's crayons or pencils at the younger levels or what have you. And I know the parents all willingly pitch in and try to help out and try to make everything go a little bit further. But I think there is that need to do something very similar we've done in our public safety, to do it for our schools and say, listen, you can use this for textbooks, you can use it for lab equipment, computers, you know, and so on and so forth, as well as a provision was put in the amendment that would have allowed for money to be used for any sort of security upgrades to any buildings that maybe a school felt needed to be done. So it gave the school department and the school committee a little wiggle room to use the resources. If that money had that passed, Auburn would have been roughly with about 3,371 students, according to the website. That would have been approximately $47,420 that could have came back to. So, you know, that was the proposal. Unfortunately, did not make it. But as I said, the Ways and Means numbers did not change, and so that will be the number of local aid for the Chapter 70 and unrestricted local aid that the House is recommending going forward. The Senate will, of course, have their own budget debate, and I would imagine in a week or two, the Senate Ways and Means will be releasing its recommendation, and then the Senate body will be debating that recommendation, offering their amendments, much like the House did. And so if there is any change, the two sides will have to work out their differences in June, and send a final version of a budget, including whatever they come up with for Chapter 70 or any local aid, to go back to the governor for his either to sign or to veto. So, you know, and another thing too is I know it's one thing that's frustrating. I know I did mention it in the letter. I know it's frustrating to try to, here you're having a town meeting next week, trying to realize what numbers should we use. And I've been a strong supporter for many, many years. We tried to do it this past January, just can't seem to get anywhere with it. But we really should be doing early local aid resolutions to our cities and towns, at least by sometime, if not in mid-March, if not earlier, so that our towns can at least understand where the House and maybe the Senate, what at least the minimum they're going to do. You know, not to say that, hey, if numbers come in better and revenues look better and we can add more to it, I mean, that's one thing, but at least give you a basement. Because using House 1, which is the governor's budget, is very difficult. Because it is a document that doesn't, you know, is just a recommendation to the legislature. And it doesn't matter what party the governor is. Whenever they seem to, you know, they can set like a tone for an argument or a discussion, but their budget doesn't just happen. It's the House and Senate budgets that happen. And so that's why it really is, I think, is important that the House and the Senate do come out early and give our cities and towns some idea of what to expect. Especially, you know, if the governor's numbers are coming in really, really high or something, or really, really low, you know, towns want to really get a feeling for where they're going to be, especially towns that have spring town meetings, that they can be able to adjust to that. So, but that's where we are at the moment. Like I said, with the budget, and it's on to the Senate, and we will have to see what they do and when they do it, which would matter. I mean, it should be by the end of the month, before the end of the month.
Wayne, do you have a
I
question?
only had one question on the thing where you were trying to get more money for Chapter 70. You said $20 per pupil. Is that, if that was defeated, is that something you'll bring up in the future?
It was going to be the future. I brought it up. I know I brought it up a number of years ago. And again, it wasn't necessarily an addition, it would be in addition to Chapter 70, it wouldn't be a part of the Chapter 70 formula. That's, as you all know, that's a very complicated thing. And so you could put $20 million into Chapter 70, and some communities may not see anything. So this was allowing every community, every school district, I should say, to see something if you just did something on a per pupil basis.
Right. Well, my basic thought is it's something that you would bring up in the future too.
Oh, I'll bring it up.
defeated
I'll bring it up again and see if we can continue to push for it and push for some of the ideas like that. Like I said, there was also another amendment that looked to try to increase Chapter 70 money, and I was more than happy to vote for that as well. And unfortunately, that did not make it. So, and that was, I think, that was just an overall increase into the formula, not necessarily a targeted per pupil, increase.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions by board members? I know I have a question. I put Senator Moore on the spot, so I think it's only fair I do the same to you. We have a big vote coming before town meeting and hopefully before the voters on our middle school project. And I'm hoping to hear any thoughts you have in your opinion and if you're supporting the project, how it's being presented.
Yeah, I am voting for the project on May 21st. As a citizen of the community, because I live here. As people know, I normally do not try to intervene in local decisions, as with my state representative title, because people don't always look at the difference and say, well, you're a state rep, or, well, I'm not a school committee member, I'm not a selectman, I'm not a mayor, I'm not a town administrator or a school superintendent. I try to deal with on the state issues, but obviously there's state money involved, there's a state investment in the project. And, I do look at the needs going forward, and not only the short-term needs of a new middle school, but the long-term needs, and I think, an opportunity, I think, down the line, and I think the direction is being headed towards, is perhaps at some point being able to maybe even consolidate schools to some extent, and take some maintenance costs off the books and other things off the books down the line. So I think that looks promising. I know that's not the forefront of what's happening in a couple of weeks, but I think that there's some opportunity there as well. So to improve almost all the schools in a sense, so that you have an improvement up and down the line, and I think that there's some opportunity for that. But in order to get there, I think you have to have the new middle school, and I think you need to do it in the way, in the fashion that it's being presented. And I personally, and speaking for myself, will be supporting it and voting it for it on Tuesday, May 21st.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I just have one thing, if you don't mind. Mr. Frost, I just want to apologize for coming in the middle of your talk. I apologize for being late. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Thank you very much. And you've been a strong advocate for Auburn and the district, and I look forward to working with you, in the future to ensure we stay on this path.
Excellent.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much, and hope everyone has a great time, and I'll let you now have your time with all your principals.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually have a number of field trips for your review and hopeful approval. The first two being ones for this school year. So with your permission, I'd like to have Mrs. Andrea Carlson to the podium, and she can just fill you in briefly regarding the trip planned along with the life skills class down to Devon Point Farm in Woodstock, Connecticut.
Hi. This year I started a food science class with the life skills students, as well as some of the students from my moderate special needs class. We are doing a unit on locavores and organic farming, and this farm is a proponent of both of those things. I belong to its farm share, a group where we pay a certain amount of money and get vegetables once a week for like 18 weeks in the summer or into the fall. So I know the farm and believe in the farm, and I want to take my students there next week. And I'm asking for your permission.
Any questions? Do you want us to vote individually or take them all together?
Probably to vote this one individually, the next one's really just informational. The 13, 14, you can vote as a group if you're so inclined.
I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Please vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. The next item is actually informational. If you remember last spring, actually it was in June, Mrs. Craver and Miss Kashula came before you to take their students to an exhibit down in New York City due to damage caused by Hurricane Sandy. It's still in New York City, it's just up the street, and instead of seeing bodies, the exhibition, they're seeing Body World's Pulse at Discovery Times Square, so just wanted to make you aware of that. The next group of items are for out-of-state field trip requests for the 2013-2014 school year, many of which have come before you in the past. I don't know that there is actually one that is a new one. So with your approval, I will turn it over first to Mrs. Aristo, who is here representing for the grade 3 trip to the Pequot Museum that happens every fall with our third grade students from JV and Packagug.
Thank you, Dr. Burnell. I'm representing Julia Bancroft and Packagug School, third grade teachers, and we would very much appreciate, again, taking our trip to the Pequot Museum. It's probably the 17th year that we've been. It's a phenomenal field trip. It's a great culminating activity for our students. After studying the lifestyle, cultures, homes, shelters, and food, they actually get to see a wax museum, and it's, you know, true to life, and they absolutely love the trip. It's a wonderful trip. I've never seen anything like it. If you haven't been, you really should try and go.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to take them as a group for the approval?
Make a-
Okay.
Well, no, we
Make a
can-
motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I think we can just approve them as we go along.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's a vote.
The next trip, this is now, will be, actually the students in 8th grade this year will be attending the 3rd annual trip to Washington DC. And they are here this evening. Mr. Watson is here to seek your approval to visit DC again next June. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Watson, this too being a very successful trip.
Good evening. I'm here as a representative of the 8th grade to ask your permission to go to Washington, D.C. in the coming 2013-14 school year. We're heading out this year on June 4th. Our itinerary, we'll see pretty much everything there is to see in Washington, D.C. We keep the kids as busy as humanly possible. We have multiple fundraisers in place to help raise funds for all students to try to make it a true 8th grade class trip. Our goal is to get every single kid to be able to attend the trip. Some of the sites we'll see, of course, include all the memorials, Arlington National Cemetery. We're trying a new place this year, the Newseum, which we've heard rave reviews about. It's kind of a modern museum, modern history museum. The Smithsonian Institutes, the Capitol Building, Mount Vernon is something new this year that we're trying, George Washington's estate. So the trip is, next year, the one I'm proposing is actually, instead of going for our standard 3 days, 2 nights, it's 3 nights, 4 days. So it's a little bit more comprehensive. We figured that a little extra time would be better served in terms of slowing the trip down. There's a lot of variables, a lot of unexpected things that could happen in a field trip of this magnitude. So having a little leeway here or there might go a long way. So we're here to ask your permission to go for next year.
And if I may, at your seats is a very detailed description that goes through each of the different curriculum areas and how this trip complements what they do in the classroom throughout the school year.
I'll make the motion to approve the 8th grade students trip to Washington DC in June.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next trip, actually, I think Mr. Hanfield is here to speak to this one. The Model UN, the United Nations program that really has just been launched this year, but has become an extremely active group, is seeking approval for 2 trips next year. The first one in November to Providence, Rhode Island, down to Brown University, and that would be a Friday through Sunday trip, basically through the weekend. And the second being in May of 2014 to the United Nations building in New York City. So if you have any questions for Mr. Hanfield, but this too has been a very successful program, especially that it is so early in its program.
Any questions?
I have nothing really to add, other than it has been very successful this year in its inaugural season, if you will. We've had the opportunity to travel with the students and Ms. Bazinet, who I believe you've heard from in the past, to competitions in Boston, and most recently in March to a competition at George Washington University, where our kids have performed very, very well. And the Brown University and United Nations trip you had before you are similar in scope. We're just changing venues.
I'll make the recommendation to approve both trips for the Harvard High School Model UN Club.
I'll second that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's a vote.
Thank you. The next one, Mr. Pietrello is here to seek your approval for the Broadway Classroom program down in New York City. Once again, that the students have participated in the past, so I will turn it over to Mr. Pietrello.
Good evening. We've done this trip for every other year, probably for the past 20-something years. Broadway Classroom is a great way for kids to see a Broadway show, talk to Broadway actors and actresses. The last time well, 2 times ago I should say, we actually did see one of our own Auburn students performing in West Side Story.
Mm-hmm.
We currently have a Auburn graduate performing in Wicked right now on Broadway. So I don't believe we will be seeing Wicked because I'm not sure, we don't know what we'll be seeing because it's too early to know what's going to be playing next May. But it's a great opportunity for our kids to see that, some of former students and what they might want to be doing with their life if they decide to go into music, Broadway acting, whatever. And it's just a one-day trip, and it's a great opportunity for the kids.
Entertain a motion if there are no questions.
I'll make the motion to approve the Auburn High School Music Department trip to New York City to participate in Broadway Classroom.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And having just recently returned from her trip to France with students, a successful trip to France, Ms. Fridella is here to seek your approval to visit Quebec next year in January.
Thank you, Dr. Brunel. Good evening, everybody. Our trip to Quebec City is nearing its 30th year. The itinerary that was designed by Gérard Delanchon, we are not changing it because it's a wonderful itinerary and it's been really a wonderful experience for our kids over the years. It blends cultural experience with practicing the language of French, as well as becoming a critical thinker and a good traveler while voyaging with other students. So we'd love to run this again. It's in January 2014, a Thursday to a Sunday, so our students do have to miss 2 days of school. But the booking during February vacation in Quebec is such that it leaves very little room for large groups to book at the same time. There's a Pee Wee hockey tournament called the Q that pretty much takes over Quebec City during February vacation. So we have been relegated to January. So we're seeking the committee's approval for our 2014 trip.
I'll make the motion to approve the Auburn High French Department's trip to Quebec, Canada in January 2014.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's a
Okay.
vote. Thank you.
The next item is,
Excuse me, before
oh,
we
I'm
go
sorry.
on, no, that's okay. I don't want to have the discussion now, but could we get on the agenda a discussion about these field trips that are just the same every year and whether or not, they really need, unless an incident
Well,
has occurred in the
understood.
past.
I think next year, depending on what happens. The issue is like if George may review
Be
the
new.
packet and may have a question, they're here so, because George is new on the committee.
Oh, okay.
So for
Yeah,
us,
that's a good point.
I
Good
do
point.
agree,
That's a
there
good
seems
point.
to be some redundancy.
Yeah,
But when there are newer members,
right.
just to give you the opportunity if you had any type of questions or concerns.
Not to open up a big discussion, we have a lot of people here tonight, but I believe that Dr. Brunel might be capable of signing off on a lot of the field trips that are local, that aren't out of state, and maybe we focus on, I don't know, this is something we could discuss, but we focus on the out-of-state field trips as a committee. Just a thought.
Can we just put it as an agenda item?
Yeah, I think it's
Sure,
a
for
good
discussion,
idea.
sure.
Yeah, just because.
That could expedite
you know,
things for you and
Some
your
of them
staff.
come in, you know, they're here for 5 minutes, and, you know, and I think some of it.
I agree, I do agree
Yeah.
with
You
you.
know, we agree with, so.
I will tell you, I did bring that before the committee a few years ago, especially for ones, and quite honestly, other than the Model UN one that's new this year, these are all repeat trips.
Right.
I think the teachers would appreciate, or perhaps even, I mean, and for a future discussion, but even if they present the information and it's reviewed without there being in attendance,
Yeah,
especially for
yeah.
repeat trips. But I will add that to the next agenda.
Okay, thank you.
But the thing is, as Jeff was saying, if you have new members that want to question it, then they have the right.
Yep.
Right, but we can bring it up and just have a discussion on it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Find a common ground.
The next item, we annually bring forward to you a review of the handbooks, and included in your packet largely was the updating of any staffing changes, and some of those will not be known until all hiring is completed, but also updating dates that are listed in here, and we did provide a summary of the changes, and it is my recommendation that you accept these. And what we'll do then is make those directly into the books. We post these online and get them ready for the fall.
I would ask if we could bundle these into one motion, just to accept. To approve the handbook districts for all schools as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second that.
okay.
Any discussion?
No, I'm just commented, sad to see bullet number 3, but Mr. Didi's leaving
Yes.
us.
Oh,
so
yes.
It was sad, so make sure you take one of those for your collective. So, that's
And
it.
I agree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote.
Great. The next item, as the leadership team, principals and Dr. Lozay, and actually I had participated with Dr. Lozay back in the fall. In October, we presented to you the Sharing Our Strengths PowerPoint, and the team is here this evening to give you an update. There's been a tremendous amount that has taken place throughout the school year, as reported to you on each of our meetings. So, with your permission, I will turn it over to, I believe Dr. Lozay is launching the presentation, and the others will be joining in.
Good evening, everyone. We're happy to be here as a team this evening to provide you with an update on our district and building-based initiatives that, as Dr. Brunel mentioned, we laid out back in October of this year. As a team, we will try to highlight our successes, but also, at the same time, share some of our continuing challenges and give you some idea of our next steps. All of our initiatives were thoughtfully planned to align with our year-wide focus on strengthening connections through rigor, relevance, and relationships. And of course, as you are well familiar with our core values, these, of course, really influenced any decision we made around initiatives being offered across our district. There were several district-based initiatives that I will speak briefly to, and then the principals will follow up and expand on those as well as others, and also talk to you a little bit about the impacts of those initiatives within their buildings. One of our districts and the state's overarching initiatives is professional learning communities, which you might know is referred to as PLCs. A very brief and simple definition of that is that it's really a group or a team of educators that are committed to sit together and work collaboratively around really reflecting on, examining their instructional practices, but also tying that directly to student achievement, always looking for better outcomes for our students. The principals at each building this year have really carved out time for PLCs to occur within their buildings, and based on the feedback, the teachers really appreciate that, and actually they'd like more time around that. And some of the direct outcomes from those PLCs this year have been the creation of team-level SMART goals that align with our educator evaluation system. They've also been able to refine units, refine lessons, and refine assessments. So that has been a wonderful initiative. Whoops, I went too far. How do I go back?
I think you'll have to do the, yeah,
I
up
used
arrow,
to have
yeah.
more than one
Here we go.
slide. They confined me to one, and it's kind of tricky, because I could do a presentation on all of it. They told me to be brief, it could be hard. So, another initiative that has been ongoing actually within the district is the vertical and horizontal teaming. That in itself also qualifies oftentimes as PLCs or professional learning communities. We find these across grades, we find them across buildings, and this year we found them across districts as well. We presently have our vertical and horizontal curriculum teams still in place, which are K-12. We have pre-AP vertical teams, which include teachers from grade 6 through 12. We have them presently in ELA and math. This summer we will be sending a vertical team of science teachers to be trained, and they will begin laying out their program for pre-AP strategies in the fall. We also have vertical teams around AP itself, and we have those in math, English, and science. A lot of these are supported through the MIMSI grant, and they also include other members from outside our district. So it's not only within the district that these teams exist. Additionally, I really want to highlight or mention a very timely example of some cross-building teaming that is happening that includes both teachers and staff, and that is our upcoming AMS and Auburn High School Relay for Life, which I think the students have talked to you about previously. This will occur on June 14th. We will have our Auburn Middle School students walk to the Auburn High School. There will be teams of students and staff that walk and participate in additional activities throughout the day to benefit this very important cause. So once again, I think if you look at teaming, it's so important. It accomplishes so much more than one individual can. As I mentioned, we have the ongoing curriculum committees. We have those around ELA, we have them in math, we have them in social studies. Those particular ones continue to align and refine according to the Common Core state standards. We continue to wait for the Department of Ed to adopt or officially adopt new science standards, and once that happens, that will be our big embarkment for next year. Oh, I did it again. Sorry. As you all know, a strict focus or a big focus of our strategic plan has been to build and maintain a strong, cohesive leadership team. This past year, our leadership team has met every 2 weeks, and then we have met additionally when called for around budget season or other initiatives within the district. We find that we are always creating impromptu meetings. We have conference calls, we have elementary principal meetings, secondary principal meetings, all aimed at the goal of that keyword consistency. I think that most people, some of you have been here as long as I have, no, she's missing, but some of us have been here a long time, and I think we can all clearly see that under the direction of Dr. Brunel, we really have grown a very cohesive leadership team, and we've come miles in terms of our consistency. The district continues to foster a distributed leadership approach, and so within our buildings, principals support this initiative by providing school-based leadership teams. They have PBIS teams, they have data teams, they have educator evaluation teams. They also have grade-level designated leaders that represent the curriculum departments when they come to meet with us in the curriculum committees throughout the year. Again, at the middle school and the high school, we have the curriculum coordinators or the department heads that help fill those roles. In addition, this year they had a new committee or team of teachers, and that was labeled the TELS Survey Committee. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the Massachusetts TEL survey provided our educators with an opportunity to really give feedback on critical points of education, such as the facilities that they're in, the resources they're provided with, time that they're given, either for planning or with students, professional development needs, or instructional practices and programs. So based on the results of that survey, each building brought together a team of educators to really examine that. They were able to celebrate a lot of successes because they were very positive across the board, but then they were also able to identify some areas where we might need some improvement, and they've each crafted some action plans towards improving those areas.
If I may, can I just ask a question there? Is it possible for us to see the results of that survey?
The TEL survey?
Yeah.
You've actually seen
Did you
the
see
results of it last spring. I can provide you another copy with it.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't recall seeing
Okay.
it, but yeah, I'd like to see that again. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Co-teaching, we talked about at the beginning of this year, it was another new initiative. We really based that on our student subgroup data, as well as requests from staff. The co-teaching this year was really focused at the middle school. We've had 3 full days of training with follow-up coaching sessions by our consultants from outside of the district. On our March day, the high school had their first overview day, and they will continue into next year with this training and coaching sessions. And the elementary actually will have their first day of overview training tomorrow, and they will again really begin to implement that next year. Keys to Literacy was actually an initiative that we began last year. We trained all of our middle school people and some of our intermediate and primary teachers around open response questions. This year, we also had Keys to Literacy vocabulary module at the middle school, and they've done Keys to Literacy comprehension module. And based on that, we had them come back on the March day and do a shorter version of the comprehension for each grade levels, elementary, middle, and high. And based on the feedback, we've been requested to have them come back and do some specific training at the elementary level, and that will take place hopefully at the end of this year or the beginning of next. I think the principals will speak a little more about that and some of the outcomes of that training. ReTEL, which is Rethinking Equity in Teaching English Language Learners. And I think I spoke to you at a January presentation when I spoke to you about ELL education within our district. This is a big one. There's a lot involved in this initiative, but Auburn has begun aggressively to address that. One of the first things we need to start thinking about is the training that will go along for our teachers. It's very substantive, the training, and it's very specific. So we will roll that out beginning in October because we're cohort 2, and we have a plan for doing that. We are also this year, because of the ReTEL initiative, no longer giving the MEPA, which is the state-mandated English language proficiency test. We now give the access. And based on what the administrators of that test said this year, it's far more rigorous than the MEPA was. So we're very eager to get those results, which should be out in a few weeks. We've also been able to participate in some webinars around the new leader standards for ELL, which we will have to roll out eventually to all of our teachers as well, as they will have to be embedded in all our curriculum documents going forward. And we are using a new locally adopted assessment, which comes along with the WIDA standards, and it's called the WIDA model. Our tutors just finished up that testing in all of the schools, and again, they do think it's a little more rigorous than what we've given in the past, but they also think it's going to provide them with far more information to really target the needs of our ELL learners, which will be a good thing. And finally, Edwin. He's not a new member of our team, but it is the new Massachusetts Teaching and Learning Online Platform, which the state is starting to roll out. They are funding this with their Race to the Top district, Race to the Top state money. And because we're a Race to the Top district, we actually have had the opportunity, where other districts have not, to participate in webinars that kind of explain this particular platform. It's a very comprehensive platform. It has 4 components. One of them is analysis and reporting tools. And that really embeds, if you're familiar with the data warehouse, which we have used in the past to access our MCAS and MEPA scores, that's embedded in that one component. It also has an early warning system, tells us which kids we really have to keep an eye on based on early warning signs, whether it's a lack of preschool, free and reduced lunch, those types of things, which will be helpful. It has another module for curriculum tools, which will provide us in our district with model curriculum units that we can do some of ours. Those could be exemplars for us to modelize after, but it also affords us the opportunity to use some of their tools to curriculum map and create our own units, which will be nice because we do a lot of that ourselves in Word, and if they have a better tool for that, that will certainly benefit the district. We'll also have a component called student assessment tools, which will be nice for those district staff and school-based staff because they can now create their own formative assessments right on this tool. It will bring down from a bank of items, things from MCAS and other vendors that they're working with throughout the state for different types of either math samples, ELA, really geared towards the new Common Core standards. So rather than teachers spending time creating that, they'll be able to pull from banks of items to create their own formative assessments. I think it will be particularly helpful as we look to make common assessments. And at this point, they're just piloting that in many districts throughout the Commonwealth, and hopefully next year, Auburn will be able to engage with the tool a little more extensively than this year, but we're just learning the basics at this point. So though I clicked, it was pretty brief, I think. So I hope you see that there's a lot of wonderful things going on. We have a lot more work to do, of course, as we always do. And I will now have Beth Chase come up and speak specifically to the elementary levels.
Not just yet. Dr. Lozay.
You have a
I have a
question?
question, I do, if you don't mind, the chair.
Okay.
On the Edwin initiative,
Yep.
is there a module or a piece within that that also helps you to identify not only children at risk, students at risk, but students that are excelling? It seems, I fear that we focus a lot on our students at risk, which I know we need to do, but I'd like to be able to also be able to kind of identify those students that, are excelling and try to implement different things to help them along as
Presently,
well.
I would say the data warehouse, which really has the MCAS data, allows us to do a lot of that work.
Okay.
The system I was talking about with the early warning indicators are really indicators that we see very young in children that help us keep our eye open for those. But going through the data warehouse or MCAS data certainly helps us see who our advanced students are and helps us really think about what extension activities or grouping practices or whatever we will do with those.
Great, thank you.
I want to change it.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here this evening to provide an update in regards to the elementary level initiatives that we reported on in October. And I, too, am delegated to only one slide. So, based on the assessments that we give at each level and the resulting data, we continue to fine-tune our analytical skills for the purposes of deciding and determining what instruction each child needs. We continue to become more adept in looking at the data and deciding what skills and gaps that data shows. Is the data telling us that certain skills have already been achieved, or are they lacking? What students need closer monitoring and interventions? What students need enrichment? And are we becoming better at determining which interventions and which instructional practices we should be prescribing for particular children? At all of the elementary schools in the district, we are looking at the data through the lens of what does this child need next to move on to the next level of achievement. Our data teams meet formally throughout the year, and the half-days that have been introduced into the calendar this year have been ideal for just this purpose. As recently as Monday afternoon, our grade level teams met and reviewed the latest data and adjusted the members of the small flexible groups, which is often the vehicle that we use to provide this instruction. At Mary D. Stone School on Tuesday morning, for example, the lists of the new flexible groups were ready for teachers, and in some cases with a renewed focus or an adjusted focus based on the data and based on the input from our professional staff members. This time on the half days allows us the opportunity to discuss the results of progress monitoring, to gauge if the interventions are working. Are the children making progress? And here's the important part: on the half-days, we have all pertinent staff. All children that work, all teachers that work with the children are there and can be involved in the discussion and in the decision-making. We, as you know, structure our instruction across the elementary schools using the response to intervention model, providing all students with high-quality, research-based instruction and ongoing assessment. Again, based on data, tiered instruction is happening in all of our schools. And this means, as we've explained to you before, we increase the intensity and the frequency of instruction for students who are deemed to be at risk. With the information from the child outcome data, small groups of students with like needs are provided differentiated instruction, which is my next bullet. Teachers create specific lessons and materials to address the different needs of each group, meeting the children where they are as they work to meet the benchmarks or beyond. Inclusion is an important practice to help deliver instruction for the vast majority of our students at the elementary level in the least restrictive environment. In inclusion classrooms all across the elementary schools, grade level curriculum is presented with all students benefiting. With the data driving the instruction and the subsequent small group instruction, the differentiated teaching, you can see how it's progressing down the slide, and the RTI model, inclusion classrooms benefit most children, sometimes with accommodations or modifications being made, but the ultimate goal with this practice is to close any achievement gaps that may exist. Inclusion leads quite naturally to co-teaching that you heard Dr. Lozay refer to just a few minutes ago. Each of our elementary schools has been dabbling in the co-teaching, piloting with at least one co-teaching team this year. This model of co-teaching has one special education teacher working with a regular education teacher, sharing the instruction for one, or in some cases, multiple subject areas. This year, the teams have had a little bit of professional development and minimal coaching by the consultants as the teams have begun to develop relationships, share teaching strategies, methodologies, and responsibilities to create a collaboration of ideas. Further professional development, in fact, a session is scheduled for tomorrow, and co-planning time is scheduled for this summer. Continued coaching will continue next year, and hopefully to ensure that this initiative continues to grow across our buildings and strengthens the achievement for our students. Finally, the last bullet, technology. Technology continues to be a tool that we use for communication, for teaching, and for learning. I've listed here just a few of the initiatives that we undertook this year. Teach Point, you're going to hear Mrs. Chamberlain talk about the educator evaluation system in just a few minutes. And this technology, using the iPad, has allowed all the administrators in Auburn to easily capture and provide feedback to teachers as we complete our observations and actually document the whole evaluation process. At the classroom level, again staying with the iPads, we have now graduated from just turning them on and opening an app to really figuring out how to incorporate this technology into our lessons, just as easily as we might pick up a pencil or a piece of paper. One other example of technology has been the program Read Live, which is a web-based program, and students have had notable increases with this program in their ability to read fluently and accurately new material that is presented to them, and most importantly, to comprehend the material that they are reading. The BrightLinks projectors, finally, we've had in our classrooms for a couple of years, but what's happening is you're really beginning to see them become an integral part of the classroom. As a matter of fact, we now have to remind our teachers to turn them off when they're not in use as we try to conserve energy. Just like you would turn the lights off when you leave a room, we're asking them to turn off the BrightLinks projectors when they're not using them. But it's wonderful to come into a classroom to see the students step up to those whiteboards and manipulate the tools, manipulate the pens, and to stay fully engaged in the lessons. And I think that's what this technology does for our students. Another benefit of this, using the BrightLinks projectors, is the excitement and the collaboration that you see among the teachers as they're building lessons and sharing those lessons. It's just a really collaborative and a great learning environment for all. So this sums up our elementary initiatives, which are well underway and by all accounts successful and really impacting our students in a positive manner. So I will introduce Mr. Gagnon from Auburn Middle School.
That's all right. Thank you. I'm here to speak to you tonight about some middle school initiatives that we reported out in the fall. And some of those are very similar to those that are in the elementary due to the fact we are cohesive across the district, where what starts in elementary, there's a continuation in middle and then on to high school. The increase in advanced classes at our middle school is part of our Race to the Top initiative, and then our increase in classes in AP classes at the high school. Currently, in our English language arts in grades 6, 7, and 8, we doubled the size of all of those sections this year. We currently have 279 students that are in advanced classes in 6, 7, and 8. In the 6th grade, I did some crunching of numbers the other day, and 95% of our students had success in those advanced classes being in the C or above range. And then I took a look at what would be more typical of advanced class work, and over 2/3, or 67% of those students, were in the A to B range, or the 80 to 100 range. Very successful. 7th grade in ELA follows the same suit, where 98% of our students were passing those classes that are advanced and rigorous. And again, 2/3 were at the 80 and above range. And then in 8th grade, we're at 99% success, where in 8th grade, all of those students that are in 6th, 7th, in 8th grade, were receiving C or better, or 70 or better in those classes, and again, it was a 2/3 mark. That was the benchmark for those of all students. In math, which is very difficult at the middle school, and all ages, to tell you the truth, for students, we have 266 students that are in advanced classes. In the 6th grade, 93% of those students are receiving a C or better in those advanced classes in 6th grade. In 7th grade, 90% or better in our pre-algebra, and in 8th grade, 94% or better in that aggregate. I think it's a very successful program at the middle school in terms of increasing those numbers. It goes along with the philosophy of the district, of the Race to the Top, and increasing those numbers at AP availability. It starts in the elementaries, continues in the middle, so that when the students get to high school, they're ready for those advanced placement courses. Increase in the instructional opportunities in conjunction with co-teaching for the Model PD. Co-teaching in middle school lends itself because of the PLCs, or the team time, that are in our schedule. What we've done is we've made sure that our special ed teachers and our regular ed teachers are to work as a cohesive team that has become seamless this year. It really has. We have 12 teams all together where these teachers work in conjunction with the coach, 2 coaches actually in the beginning of the school year, and now 1 coach, that comes in on the 3 professional development days, full day, and then half days for the rest, where they come in and actually look in the classroom and make sure that the instruction that they're receiving in those professional developments are now being utilized and or being coached to be utilized within those classes. I've been in classes through our walkthroughs we've talked about, through Teach Point that we've done, where seamlessly one teacher will leave off and the other will pick up. And our goal is to have as many students as possible in inclusionary classes. So our special ed students receive the same instruction that their regular ed counterparts receive. We've reduced significantly the amount of pull-out classes that we have at the middle school this year, and are aiming to next year to decrease that even more. Rigor for all students, our intervention blocks. For direct instruction, we have 70 students that are pulled out once every 6 days in our rotating schedule during one of the unified arts blocks to receive direct instructions from an entire team of teachers. So an entire team of teachers work with a group of between 6 and 12, depending on the grade level. And we took a look at, well, what are we going to utilize this for? And math has been a struggle for some of our students, and these 70 in particular. So we have these students, we looked at the data as a leadership team, and we said, you know, in terms of MCAS, we looked at number sense. In number sense, repeatedly, you go on the DESE website and you look historically, what are the types of questions in number sense that keep coming up that our students struggle with? Fractions are again, in manipulating fractions, are the most difficult for our students. So utilizing assessments, which Mr. Bastian and Ms. Moran have helped us bring into our middle school through RPI, we were able to get those students on the assessments program in direct instruction with manipulators since the beginning of the school year back in October. Recently, about 4 weeks ago, we had a benchmark test through assessments with these students. We took a pause after that benchmark and we said, these students still continue to struggle, and we need to continue to work with them to understand fractions so by the time they leave our middle school that they have a firm understanding of how to manipulate fractions. So when they go on in life and on at the high school, they'll have that understanding. keys to literacy, I'd like to talk about our ORQs. Our ORQs, I don't know if you're familiar with the rubric for open response questions, but it's a 1 through 4 rubric, with 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. Our students score in the 3s and 4s when given those ORQs monthly for over 75% of our students. We have 25% of our students that score in the 2 range, and we have a negligible amount of students that score 1. So that training that we've had with the ORQ and continued training through the support of Dr. Lozay, Dr. Brunel in the district, any new teacher who comes into our district, they're given that training. So that training is there for all of our faculty. The Innovation School grant is proceeding well. That's the grant that 3 of our teachers, and then as a start, and then a core of, I believe we have 8 teachers on the team, myself, Dr. Brunel, Dr. Lozay. It continues on Thursdays after school with the Young Engineers camps that we have. And primarily 6th graders are involved in that class, and they love it. They've gone down there. I've seen them make buzzers out of different materials that they get. It's kind of like if you watch Apollo 13, and where they take a bunch of what would look like to us different junks from a junkyard, they pull out what they need to make, and they come up with some pretty neat things that they do. I have with me here, for our summer program, this has gone out to our schools, a nice pamphlet put together by the STEM team. We are offering a course this summer, 1 week long, that students will pay a small tuition fee to attend for a Young Engineers camp that'll run a week. This is our pilot program for this year. And then for all students, which was part of the grant, we purchased the Gizmos program, which all of our teachers in science have become familiar with and have had professional development and utilize on a daily basis in their classes. Technology for teaching and learning. The middle school this year, next year actually, is going to pilot a program in one-to-one usage. The superintendent and a group of citizens have come together on a committee. Mr. Bouvier is also part of that committee, our technology person for the district. And we decided to start with 8th grade, have 60 iPads that will rotate through the entire 8th grade next year, students having those in their hands during the day for 40 days. Then we'll wipe those clean, get the next group to get in there with those iPads for 40 days, and so on, until all 8th graders have had exposure to it, and take a look at how this has affected them in teaching and learning the advances. We already know that it's an engagement tool for sure, but we want it to be much more than that. We want to see advanced scores coming out of usage, and currently all of our 8th grade teachers have an iPad in their hand for the past 2 months, so they can become familiarized, look at applications, look at how they're going to integrate it to teaching and learning, and they've already utilized it themselves in their classrooms. So we want to make sure that our teachers are well learned in utilizing this tool for teaching and learning before we introduce it to those students. There's also a district-wide committee that's also looking into the one-to-one initiative. Thank you.
Mr. Gagnon, does anyone have any questions? Just real quickly, is that, the iPads, are they not just on school grounds? Do they take those home for that 40-day period as well? Or they stay in?
Currently, with this pilot program, they're going to stay in school.
Okay.
We're looking at, in terms of getting in the hands of all students, would have required a much more significant investment, and that's not how you're going to run a pilot program. So we're going to keep them in school for the 40 days, but they'll have them for the entire day for all of their classes. And they'll be put in carts at the end of the day to recharge. And at the end of 40 days, with the next crew, to utilize them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening again, everyone. We have been quite busy, as you've heard this evening, at the Auburn High School specifically. We have a number of initiatives underway. Mrs. Chamberlain will speak to you in a few minutes about the implementation of the new teacher evaluation system. At Auburn High School, we currently have approximately 30 of our teachers on cycle this year, and next year that will go to 60, as we're required next year to have full implementation. It's been a definite change in practice. It's been one that has been challenging, I think, initially for us as administrators and for the teachers as we're getting used to it, but it's definitely paying off, I think, in the richness of conversations that are taking place between the administrators and the teachers, and that ultimately I think is going to lead down the road to the improvement of our teaching and learning in classrooms. So that's rolling, and like I said, Mrs. Chamberlain will talk to you more about the particulars of that in a few minutes. In terms of rigor, I've talked to you in the past about our advanced placement program. It's partially through MIMSI, the Massachusetts Math and Science Initiative, but we also have kind of our own AP program that ties into MIMSI. 2 years ago, we had 115 advanced placement enrollments. This year we have 237, and as of 8:35 this morning, we have 395 for next year. And as this program continues to grow, we can see it going in the right direction. Our students clearly are going to have much more competitive transcripts in the college admissions offices and be stronger competitors with their peers, not only across the state and nation, but across the world. Much as Mr. Gagnon had pointed out to you with respect to his kind of quick analysis of student performance, our students share similar results as Mr. Gagnon in our AP classes. Students are performing at a C or better in most all classes. I think there's only 2 exceptions out of the students involved. So our students are reaching the bar that we've set for them and reaching it quite well, and I think as you see that number climbing next year to 395, that word is getting out, not only to the benefit of advanced placement, but the fact that it's actually attainable, and I think the fear that kids had in the past is abating. We continue to work together as a district around improving our SAT scores. This year, for the first time, we offered Ready Step in grade 8. Ready Step is a precursor to PSAT and SAT administration. We are seeing pockets of improvement in student scores. This summer we're going to be convening a committee comprised of teachers and administrators grades 6 through 12 to tackle the challenges that we still face with the SAT administration and develop a plan that's holistic in nature to prepare our students better and earlier for SAT success. At the high school we're continuing to offer college seminar taught by our guidance department and SAT preparation classes, and we're always actively seeking ways that we can improve current programming. Last year we crested at 70% for four-year college attendance for our seniors, and a quick tally today among my guidance counselors will have us passing that number by almost 10 to 12%. We need to have those numbers confirmed once our seniors do their end-of-year surveys. So we're very pleased that our students are increasing their four-year college attendance. With respect to MCAS, our scores have been commendable in the past, but certainly there's always room for improvement. We're not where we want to be. We want all of our students in proficient and advanced categories. This year we identified students in grade 10 based on their previous test history, as well as on their benchmark assessments that we too give at the high school. And for those students that we felt were at risk of not performing well on the MCAS, we placed them into a program which I call pre-remediation, which I'm not sure is even a word. But it always struck me odd that we remediated students after they failed the test. Why don't we do it before? And so the state's allowed us to use the grant money that they've provided for remediation after a failure to do this pre-remediation program. So we are hoping to get those students that we feel would have been in danger of not meeting with success the first time on MCAS, meeting with success, and by that I mean scoring in at least the advanced range at the first test administration. As I just mentioned, we continue to offer our benchmark assessments, much like my colleagues have spoken about, in all of our core courses. Students are focusing on reading, writing, and thinking critically across all of our curriculum. We analyze those on professional development days, as Mrs. Chase had alluded to earlier, and we think as a group about what the results are showing us, and we're revising and reviewing and changing and modifying, etc., as necessary. We continue to focus on writing across the curriculum, I think as Dr. Lauzé had spoken to earlier, open response questions, which impact all of our students taking the MCAS, database questions, FAQs, and science. And then this year also renewing a focus on the research writing process, that is more than Google, and the nature of scientific writing, writing lab reports and writing in a scientific nature, has also been a focus throughout our departments. Our STEM programming continues to grow at Auburn High School. We will continue courses next year that were new this year in the area of robotics, bioengineering, and environmental engineering. We're also adding AP Computer Science to our menu of AP offerings at the high school. The other one being AP Psychology, which will give us a total of 15 offered in building for our students. And we're also working at the high school and with, again, our colleagues across up and down the curriculum with respect to implementing the Common Core in mathematics, which is causing curriculum changes and revisions and rethinking the way that we're delivering mathematics instruction to our kids in the district. The co-teaching you've heard about, that's no different at the high school. We have a co-teaching initiative underway as well. One of our challenges, in addition to improving our SAT scores, is improving the performance of our special education students. And the co-teaching model, which we've talked about at length, is the model that we feel will be most beneficial to our students. And we are preparing for a fall launch of our NEASC 2017 visit. It's hard to believe that it's been that long, but they will be here before you know it to visit with us. The standards have been revised since our last visit in 2007, and they were revised in 2011, and fortunately I think we're in great shape because as we were doing our progress reports to NEASC from 2007 through, as they require, we had been making the changes that we knew were coming. But we're going to start in the fall forming our committees, start looking at the new standards, unpacking what those are. And this certainly will keep alive the idea of continuous improvement and being fresh, if you will, in our building, as well as start keeping an eye towards providing a world-class education to our kids. Not just a high class or good, but world-class and what that means. In terms of relevance, 21st century skills, at the high school, you've heard me talk about this for a while. Our students are constantly barraged with that, starting with their 8th grade orientation, in terms of the importance of what 21st century skills are and the fact that they need to develop them throughout high school. And we're expanding on that this year. Students being able to develop their 21st century skills not only in the classroom, but through a cluster-based advisory program where students have been grouped across grade levels by common interests. Typically these interests are career interests. So everything that we're doing at Auburn High School is reinforced through the activities that are going on in cluster-based advisory. It's reducing the anonymity of our kids, delivering that personalization. It's giving them that opportunity to meet kids that they might not otherwise have had a chance to meet, because it's 9 through 12, not just grade alike. And it's also giving them 2 faculty members to connect with that share the similar interests, which is huge. It's about students thinking about themselves, talking about themselves and their futures, and thinking about what needs to be done in order for them to realize their dreams. And then tying into that, the relationships piece, we've talked again a lot about, kind of developing that safe and supportive school environment. You've heard a lot of discussion from us at the high school about bullying and the initiatives that we've undertaken there. Ms. Barrett and Ashley Fairbanks were here, I think, about a month and a half ago to discuss the Blackout Bullying Day that they experienced in Boston, but also the activities we had undertaken at Auburn High School. We also are going beyond just the whole notion of bullying, and we're working and continuing to work with Dr. Paul Poteet from Boston College on school climate issues, issues that are specific to Auburn High School. Previous to the April vacation, we hosted breakout groups with Dr. Poteet and clusters of kids from grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, fed them lunch, and we asked them to talk very openly about their experiences, in the high school, experiences that we wouldn't necessarily see as adults because we don't run in their social groups. They talked about, different cliques. They talked about student-to-student treatment of each other. They talked about things that we can do as a school to improve our school culture. And especially they talked about the aspects of student life that, as I said, we don't see. And so Dr. Poteet and his assistants are putting together the student responses, and will be sharing that report with us later in June. So there's a lot going on, a lot of good things. As Dr. Lousay said at the outset, you know, a lot to celebrate, but we also do, you know, we do have our challenges, and we are tackling those aggressively. But I'm proud of the work that we're doing here and what I've heard across the district, and consistency certainly as a parent, I think, from what you're hearing from people tonight. So if there aren't any questions, I will let Mrs. Chamberlain jump up here eagerly to talk about teacher evaluation. And I'll even change your slide.
Good evening. Nice to see all of you. Mr. Hanfield just spoke of consistency and things that are common to us all, and this process of the educator evaluation process and model from the Department of Education is certainly the one that's been the most profound, I think, and the most impactful on each of our buildings this school year. When I spoke with you back in October, I spoke about the fact that we were beginning this process. And part of the beginning of the process talked about we all had to do a self-assessment, reflect on our own practice, and that was for every teacher and administrator, and Dr. Brunel, I believe, as well, with a similar model. Well, we reflected on our practice. We went through a whole process of training on how to write SMART goals for ourselves, one being around our professional practice, the other one being focused on student learning, so each teacher did that. Went through the self-assessment, the goal-setting process, and then we were kind of off and running a little bit. And then came the meat and potatoes of now following through on all of that. The tool that the district has been able to provide us to facilitate this process has been TeachPoint, which Mrs. Chase spoke about earlier. It's a program or an app that we all have on our iPads that we utilize to document the process that we're going through. All the forms are already there for us to use, and that was where the goals were set, the self-evaluations were done, and are stored there. Our next step as we began the school year was one of the biggest changes in the evaluation process, and that are the unannounced visits, up to 10 for each of the folks that are being evaluated. In my building, I have 11. Mr. Hanfield said he has about 30 in his building, so it varies. This year, for our first year as a Race to the Top district, we were asked to do at least 50% of our staff. Next year, that will change. Everyone will be on cycle at some point, but for this first year, it's 50%. So we are responsible to do up to 10 unannounced visits. They last anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes or so within the classroom, during which time we're documenting what we're seeing on a classroom observation form that we have in our TeachPoint app. And from there, the important part comes when we then follow up with the conversation with the teacher. What did we see? Why did this happen? Suggestions, asking the teacher to reflect on how they thought things went through as we were sitting there observing them, and then that visit is documented. I will say in my building, it really has pushed those conversations. It keeps us talking about what kids are learning and how things are being presented in the classroom. And it's been, you know, there's been a little bit of an uphill on getting used to keeping that momentum going, because 10 visits for 11 people is a lot. But they're all well spent, they're all important, and they've all, I believe, been very valuable. And I know in our conversations as a leadership team, we felt that, you know, first year with anything, it's a challenge, but it's all been good so far as far as what those conversations have produced. So that's the first piece of it. For first year teachers, there's also the typical full lesson observation that's followed by a written narrative summary of what the administrator saw, along with the accompanying conversation about what did the lesson include. But again, it's an entire lesson. That's for first year teachers only. But again, similar to the unannounced visit, only longer in length, so that you can get a real true sense of what a lesson looks like in that classroom. The formative assessment process, formative being, we kind of consider it as that check-in. How are things going? Where are you in this process? So for non-professional status teachers, which are those teachers who have been here less than 3 years with us, that happens in the middle of the year because they're on a one-year cycle. So at that point, we've all sat down with those teachers. There again is a form in Teach Point that we complete with them, but it's a reflection process. So remember at the beginning of the year, you set this professional goal for yourself. What have you collected for evidence up to this point that relates to meeting that goal by the end of the school year? I may bring to it what I've seen as far as through some of my unannounced visits or in conversations with that teacher to say, yeah, I've seen that too. Okay, you're well on your way. This is what needs to happen up until the end of the year so that you can meet your goal. That same conversation happens around the student learning goal that they've set. Typically, in most cases, the student learning goal was set as a team goal. I know in my building it is all focused on success around the DRA assessment, which is a reading comprehension assessment. So at the mid-year, we all did a check-in. How many kids are on their way to meeting the benchmark? What students are still maybe struggling, and what can we do to remediate that now in the middle of the year? So that happened kind of, not necessarily in January. It was the whole process started a little bit later this year for our first year, so it was closer to March that we had those conversations this year. Next year, I'm sure our timeline will be much more on point. The formative assessment process for our professional status teachers, those teachers that have been here with us for more than 3 years and are considered professional status, their formative assessment check-in happens now in May and June because their cycle is a 2-year cycle. But again, the process is the same, where we say, okay, this was your student learning goal. How are your students progressing at this point? Will they get there? The same thing with their professional practice goal. Where are you in the process? Throughout all of this, there is an evidence collection process that we've worked with on teachers. So they're not coming and just saying, I now have a well-functioning web page and I have support materials on there for staff, for students, and I communicate certain things with parents. They're coming with maybe some printed evidence having to do with that. So we're really looking for hard evidence that things are progressing as they should in each of these areas, whether they are non-professional status or some of our professional status teachers. And then finally, there's a summative process, which is kind of an end of the year, how did things go? Did we make it or didn't we make it? And how are you feeling about your practice at this point? This May and June, this summative process will happen with only our newest teachers, our teachers that have been here less than 3 years, for that summative evaluation. Again, there is a form through Teach Point where they fill out and they provide a reflection on both of the goals that they set for themselves, along with the 4 standards that are associated with the rubric that they started with at the beginning of the year. So it's kind of a circling back to where we started. Where did your practice move forward when we talk about teaching all students, which is one of the 4 standards included on the rubric? How did your practice progress with your professional responsibility as far as your collaboration and your communication with your colleagues? So we'll have that, again, they'll bring all of their evidence at that point. They'll have reflected on each of those areas, and we as administrators will have done the same. And then again, it becomes that collaborative conversation about what we saw, how they feel, and it's at that point that teachers will be provided with a rating scale. I spoke at the beginning of the year that there are exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory ratings, and those are assigned at the summative point in this process. It is a learning curve for all of us, but I will say, I am proud and pleased with where we have been this year going through this for our first year. Dr. Brunel and Dr. Lozay, through the committees that they began with the collaboration of lots of folks in the district last year and again continuing into this year, I think have helped to alleviate a lot of our own fear that we want to do the right thing for teachers, as well as alleviating some of the anxiety of teachers entering into this new process that is pretty complex, has a lot of new components to it. But Dr. Brunel's been very good about, you know what, we're doing the best we can this year. We're going through this, it's an open dialogue, and we'll get better at it as next year comes and goes. But in meetings and things that we've been through with other people across the state, we are in great shape with this process. And with the openness we've been able to have with union representation and how all of that's gone. So I know from a leadership perspective, I think we're all pretty proud of where we are right now with this process. But as with anything, we have to continue to move forward and get better each year. That's my slide. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Lopez. I only have 6 slides, so you can sit back. Kidding. Okay, looking forward, or looking ahead, as you've heard, there's been many accomplishments that have been shared by my colleagues that we can celebrate in each of the Auburn Public Schools. And still there are many things we continue to refine and work on as part of our commitment to ongoing improvement. Keeping this in mind, I'd like to share some of the areas that we'll be strengthening and focusing on during the last month of school and into summer. Not only are we building on our successes through ongoing conversations about best practices, curriculum, and Common Core alignment, we are extending these successes by broadening our impact of effective teaching practices as we improve student learning at all levels and in all content areas. In Keys to Literacy, previously we shared the training and goals of improving ELA in a concerted effort to integrate writing across the curriculum. As part of that programming, there's been significant improvement in our use of Keys to Literacy at the Auburn Middle School. These strategies continue to be refined by the staff, and they're spending time currently creating exams that reflect the standards where they've identified they need to improve upon. These common assessments at each grade level will provide opportunities for students to demonstrate their understanding and teachers the ability to analyze the data for future instruction. Additionally, at the end of the school year, all elementary staff will continue their work with Keys to Literacy strategies as they receive an in-depth training on integrating Bloom's taxonomy of higher order thinking skills into their daily lessons and units of instruction. With regards to STEM and engineering as elementary, as we look into wrapping up this year, we'll reflect on the STEM initiatives that have been used at the middle school as well as the high school, with the goal of refining and strengthening these as we move forward. At the elementary level, we've had the opportunity to dabble in the elementary as engineering kits utilized at each grade level. We've begun to interweave these important engineering, designing, and math skills, and have piqued the interest of students as well as many of the teachers. We continue to stay abreast of the state initiatives to identify what Auburn students will need to understand and be able to apply for future success in these areas. Our aim is to continue to provide coherence through experiential learning, through curriculum, instruction, and standards. These types of experiences and opportunities will create and expand over the course of the summer and into next year through the ongoing curriculum work. With regards to PBIS, the leadership team has created committees, and they've been organized and working on several initiatives for the past few months. One of these is the Anti-Bullying Committee, which directly relates to our use of the PBIS model. Recently, we sent out a survey to the Auburn community that was completed by the students, the parents, and the staff. This data has been consolidated and given to the leadership team. Over the next few weeks, time will be given to begin to analyze and dissect this data so that we can begin to plan appropriate strategies and respond to any concerning areas indicated through the feedback we've received. The committee will reconvene to discuss these steps to ensure that the safest learning environment possible will be provided and apply these into our PBIS programs. In terms of our upper level classes and the opportunities, as Principal Gagnon and Principal Hanfield shared, there are many opportunities for students attending both the Auburn Middle School and the Auburn High School. Continuing to add more advanced placement classes along with broadening learning opportunities has been expanded at both schools. As we've seen, our students, when given the challenge, will rise to the occasion and are met with great success. By offering more of this caliber of class, we are able to provide opportunities for all students to excel and exceed in math, ELA, science, and social studies. As we begin to focus on our English language learners, the state indicates that we must provide support to all of our very diverse populations. And as such, we have teachers in each of our buildings who specialize in English language learner instruction. They work alongside of our teachers daily as they provide the much-needed support for our students who are becoming proficient speakers, readers, and writers of the English language. As we create the classes for next year, we embrace this diversity, and classroom teachers have volunteered to be our ELL teachers. They'll be trained to support those students so that they too can meet success throughout their years in the Auburn Public Schools and then beyond. Moving into the summer, though many think that summer is a relaxing time for educators, this time actually is quite busy, and it allows us an opportunity to expand upon our knowledge base, learn new techniques, and to provide the best possible instruction over our ever-changing population. For instance, in preschool, the staff will receive training on the newly purchased curriculum called Opening Our World of Learning. Technology professional development will be inclusive of our ed tech teacher out of Harvard, working with staff on transforming the classroom through the use of iPads that Principal Gagnon mentioned earlier. Our technology director will be offering several technology-based sessions. Elementary teachers will be researching appropriate apps to support curriculum as well as targeted interventions, and several other professional development opportunities will be provided. There will also be advanced placement and pre-advanced placement professional development trainings for staff in grades 6 through 12. Finally, there will be much surrounding the development of curriculum throughout the summer. This includes further revisions to the report card in kindergarten through grades 5, which is the standards base that needs to be revisited and revised as needed. We'll continue to further align our English language arts curriculum with the Common Core state standards. At the middle school, there'll be further alignment of the mathematics within the state's Common Core, while at the high school, we'll be working in the area of aligning the science. Additionally, time will be spent on the curriculum to address our English language learners' needs, of course. And finally, as Principal Chamberlain alluded to, the Educator Evaluation Committee will continue their work to ensure that the administration, along with the teaching staff, work cohesively in a collaborative relationship guided with professionalism and the commitment to serving the students of Auburn. In closing, I realize there were many things you heard this evening surrounding the continuous work that we're always involved in. But as always, we strive for excellence and are dedicated to our students and the parents of the Auburn community. If there are any questions for any of us? Thank you.
It's a great presentation.
It was an awesome presentation, but I do have several questions, if I may. And I saved them all, Dr. Brunel, just assuming that you could probably answer most of them. First, I want to say thank you to everyone. Yeah, the presentations were great, and yet again, I'm very impressed with where we are and where we're headed. One of the things that I wanted to ask about was SAT scores. Do we as a society foresee those waning by colleges in the future? You're starting to hear that colleges aren't really looking at it. And the reason I ask is, for me personally, as a student, give me a presentation and a report, and I was wonderful at doing that. Put a test in front of me, and I just bombed it. I was not a good test taker. So as much as I think the SAT scores are extremely important, and the colleges do look at that and everything, I've started to hear some rumblings that, you know, colleges may not be looking at that, and I'm just curious as to your feedback or comment on that.
Yeah, actually, I may have Mr. Hanfield come up and address it as well. So there was some talk out there, I think, was it last year that you addressed it in a Rockets review, that it may not be as important a piece as perhaps it once was. I think that with any measure, it's one piece of the puzzle, but I do think that it still is an important piece of the puzzle, especially where schools may be trying to make a determination between a number of high-achieving students who may present with very like or similar characteristics in terms of their involvement in school, their grade report and things. So it could be used as a deciding factor, I think. Do you agree, Mr. Hanfield?
Sure.
Sad.
Yeah, it's
you know, it's a complex issue. Well, it's more complex than I think maybe people realize. There is, you know, some truth. I mean, a lot of schools now are SAT optional, or, you know, don't require SAT. And as Dr. Brunel said, you know, it is one measure, and certainly I think, much like the MCAS or any standardized test, it doesn't necessarily capture the whole picture of a child. But where the SATs are important, are in a couple of areas. One, a lot of schools have academic merit money that they award to students based on academic achievement. One of the criteria are their SAT scores. So potentially students and families are missing out on potential merit awards based on those scores. The other part of it is that for schools like, I'm going to use Harvard as an example. Harvard gets 40,000 applications, on average, and they accept, maybe 2,000 students, and they all look the same. And so what they use for a cut score is their SAT. And we've had students on both sides of the fence. We've had students that have been accepted to MIT and to Williams and Amherst and very prestigious colleges, and we've had students who have not. And when you look at what the difference is, one to a lesser extent is the rigor of the transcript, but the other is the SAT. To even compete in say a Harvard type of league, to even get really looked at seriously, you've got to be at least 2,000 or above, and even that's probably not going to maybe necessarily get it for you. So it's really kind of a two-pronged piece. For us, we're looking at making sure that we're at least at the state averages, for SAT score performance, but that for those kids who really truly have that potential to get those merit awards in terms of scholarship money, or to even further have the prestigious honor of being accepted to Harvard or something like that. That's where it really comes into play. And so again, it's complex because it's important, but then it becomes a value set of what families and students value. Perhaps that's not in there. That's not what they're looking to do. They're looking to do something different where the schools, don't necessarily require them. So how much effort do you put into preparing for them if it's not something that, is a requirement? But I think for us it's a re-education of kind of they are important even though they're optional, and these are the reasons why.
Okay. I just wanted to get some feedback on that. The second comment I have, and I apologize because I used to be up on technology and I'm not anymore. So when it comes to iPads, if the student's using the iPad all day long, I assume that they're putting notes in there and they're putting assignments in there. So how do they go home at night to do their homework and their assignments if the iPad's at the school, they don't have it with them? And I'm just trying to understand how that works.
Sure. Well, one of the issues, so we've got two initiatives going with the iPads. The one is the pilot program that Mr. Gagnon spoke about that'll happen in 8th grade next year. And we're still meeting around that to determine the best way to do it, because we're only purchasing 60 for approximately 200 students, 180 students. So they're going to need to take turns with them. The other initiative is the one-to-one implementation team that Mr. Bouvier is leading to look more long-term. So in terms of the pilot, I think that two ways we've been looking at it. Do we send them home with the students, or do we keep them in school? Because they're not going to be an individual students for the entire year.
Sure.
So I think right now, Mr. Gagnon had indicated that they would stay in school. I think we're going to continue to discuss that, if that makes sense. But the work that the students would do in school, all of their lessons would incorporate the iPad in it, but they could feasibly still go home and do other work. But I don't know that we've actually determined 100% that they won't go home. There are issues that go along with that. Insurance, so we're looking to other school districts. These are $500 pieces of equipment to have them carried back and forth to and from school.
And I'm not, favoring for them to bring them home.
Sure.
I'm just thinking, I don't really understand how the iPad works. So I'm trying to visualize, is it instead of a student sitting there with a notebook writing their notes down, are they putting them on the iPad? And if that's the case, they go home at night, they don't have that. So do you download it on a disc and let them take the disc? I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I actually think having a demonstration, maybe Mr. Bouvier can come in and have everyone play with an iPad for a bit, because for those of you who have, but if you have a smartphone and with the apps and things, I mean, there are, all right. But I actually think having him come in and demonstrate and have you play with it a little bit would be a great activity to do, and the apps on there, I mean, thousands. You can, okay, go ahead. You may want to just go to the microphone so they can catch you on tape.
I'm sorry, I'm just so
That's
far
okay.
behind
Yeah,
on this
no.
technology
A lot
stuff.
that
question.
that can be done on the iPad can be done in the cloud. So imagine just with any PC or any device, whether it be, you know, an iPad or whether it be a laptop computer or your phone now, because your phone can do this as well. We're trying to train our students to utilize Google Docs. So with Google Docs, you put it up there in the cloud for storage, and you can access it. For anything they would need at home, they can just go home to their computer,
Got it, okay.
access that and bring it in. What we're trying to get to the point of is where students can submit papers to their teachers electronically, the teachers can correct them electronically, send them back to the students, and the students can make the revisions and see what they needed to adjust, grammatically, spelling, all those things that they used to take out those red pins for. The red pins won't be necessary because they'll use the app, or the iPod. So it'll be utilized for both.
Yeah, okay,
definitely,
that,
Yep.
yeah,
And at some
clarifies
point,
it for me a little bit,
after the pilot's through, and we take a look at that, and the committee does their work, we may be looking to expand it where they do take them.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. And then, in regards to the teacher evaluation piece, and I am so thrilled where we are with that, I really am. But one of the things, and I know this was the first time out, and I just wanted to ask the question, because there was a little bit of delay in doing the non-professional teachers and not till March. Is that what you said, Mr.? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understood that. Then the end of the year is right around the corner, so the non-professional teachers, because this was just implemented and everything, really isn't getting penalized, right? That doesn't give them a lot of time to kind of recover from what the discussion might have taken place.
No, and I think just to clarify, so all of the teachers, and this is brand new for all of us, so we probably launched in October or so, and I think what Mrs. Chamberlain had stated is that the mid-year assessment happened in March. Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's what I'm speaking to. So I would assume the mid-year assessment is something where you point out some weaknesses and some things that they need to improve on.
Right.
You don't have a lot of time between March and June.
Sure.
And that's what I'm asking. So they're not getting penalized for that.
No, and I would tell you that this is, the approach that we took right from the very beginning on this was that the paperwork was not what was most important. It was about if we could say at the end of the year that we had increased the number and depth of the conversations around teaching and learning, it would be considered a success. So, and due to the efforts of all of the people in the room here, it really has been a tremendous success this year, but we are not using this as a gotcha. And that's been made very clear to the teachers right from the start, that it's about growth and continuous improvement.
Okay, terrific, thank you. And then the last thing, and I want to preface this by saying I am in no way trying to put anybody on the spot or anything here, and because I think the story we've told is wonderful. This slide here, looking ahead on what our next initiatives are wonderful, but what I would like to see, and this is for the members to think about, is that I'd like to see a slide, and I really would hate to ask this, but some goals that were put in place that didn't get met and the reasons why.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Was there something, now I understand, looking ahead, these are things that you're looking ahead on, and is the opportunities for the students in upper level classes, was it because you had a goal to get them to a certain, and you didn't meet that goal this last school year? That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm just trying to see, I'm not trying to pick out and say, like, gotchas and say, but I'd like to see, because I know, and I'm just talking in the business world, I do performance reviews and everything, and we look at different goals, and if we don't meet a certain goal, it's why? Is it because you didn't have the support you needed, or you didn't have the tools that you needed, or was there? So if there's any, that's just something I would like to see, just to see as a collective community. Is there something we could have done to maybe help them meet that goal, or whatever? Do you guys understand where I'm going at here?
I think if it comes down to a financial aspect, but I don't know.
I think that,
I'm not trying to intrude on personnel issues or anything like that. I'm just saying if there was a policy that we have in place that prevent, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that, embracing the whole philosophy around continuous improvement, maybe we didn't make as much progress as we wanted to in some goals. I suppose that's possible. But a couple of things in the self-assessment I did on my goals and on the rubric there, I think that spoke to it in many cases. But we could certainly look to see, I mean, in several of these goals were intentionally not set as one-year goals, because anytime you're looking to make big shifts in programming, they take time and they need buy-in from all stakeholders. So I think I understand what you're saying, and we can try to put something together on it, but I will tell you that I think, as everybody saw in watching this evening, the team that we have in place is tremendously hardworking, extremely professional, and really take extremely seriously the work that we do, and making sure that we do provide opportunities for our students to excel regardless of their entry point. Everybody comes to us, each of us comes with strengths and challenges, and they really lead us in a great direction. So, but I'll give that some thought, and we'll process that through as a leadership team.
Us as a committee,
Sure.
Is there anything we can do? And again, please, I'm really not looking for the gotchas and the how come you didn't get this done or something. I just want to know, you know, are there things that you really wish could have gotten accomplished that you couldn't, and what were the roadblocks that you know, ran into or something
Sure.
like that?
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Members have any questions or comments?
Through the chair, I'd like to take that one step further, and first of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone on the presentation. It's fantastic, and I can see the passion that goes into making this work. And I would like to get, not directly, but I would like to get some feedback from the teachers through the superintendent, anonymously even, so that we have a feel for where they're coming from. You're not always going to get the truth when you leave the classroom, how they felt about the observation or the 9th and 10th observation that year. But what they thought of it, what they think of the whole process, maybe not the end of this year, this is still brand new and it's still a moving target, maybe toward the middle of next year, toward the end of next year. And I'm not asking for their exact comments, but the feedback through the superintendent, and if we could get some of that. And maybe, I don't want to call them negatives, but I want to call them their opinions.
Sure. And you're speaking through the chair specifically about the EdEval implementation, correct?
I am.
Okay. Okay.
Everything that it entails, whether it's the amount of classroom visits, the conversations that ensue following the visits, or even some of the other things that they're going to be held accountable for, whether it's community relations and parental contacts. And I know I heard at one point tonight that the parental contact, that you may be looking for something in writing to prove just where they're at as far as that goes.
Okay.
What was their success in contacting the parents and actually being able to document it? Because I know it's difficult enough, especially probably at the lower levels, to have a field trip slip signed and brought back, or as we know, to have the as we've been mentioning, every 2 weeks now, the bus application forms turned in. It's very difficult to get things from the parents, and those are the type of things that concern me, holding the teachers accountable for that, and I'd just like to get a little feedback.
Sure. We did, when we brought the EdEval team back together for this next segment of this program, which is the district-determined measures, and we're engrossed in that work now. We actually started the meeting by saying, let's talk about, and it's a representative group from across the district, what's working well, what are some questions and concerns that we still have, because I think anytime we take on something this dramatically different, we always did evaluation, but it's really done in a much different way, that there'd be some normal trepidation and anxiety from people, and I will tell you the positives far outweighed any concerns they had, but I'm happy to get some data to share with you.
Thank you.
Anyways, I'll just say it's been a long day for all of you. It's a little warm in here. You can see we're going for the trophy, so. But not to, I agree with everyone here. This was a fantastic program. I think you're doing great work, and our kids are benefiting from it. So you know, we are here to advocate for your needs, and I thank you very much for the presentation tonight.
Great job. I always sit like a proud mama sitting up here listening to all of them do their great stuff. It's good stuff. It's great stuff that's happening. Great stuff. Thank you. Do you want to take a break? Eric just needs to set up his laptop for the presentation. Oh, unless we can
Good night,
continue on.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let's set up
Turn on the air conditioner.
Oh, we turn on the air conditioner?
That'd be
Okay.
nice.
I thought it was just me. Eric, if you want to set up, we're just going to continue with the agenda.
I will too.
I'm just going to, is it okay if I unplug?
Yes, it is.
Got that right.
So we're just going to move up while he sets
Sure,
up
no
a
problem.
few things.
Okay.
The breaker.
Dan thinks the breaker might be.
I don't know, maybe that one works. Thank you.
Who's responsible for paying the electric?
So we
This is the
can,
energy conserving.
Yeah, exactly.
remember?
We won the trophy.
I'm gonna move up,
So just skip over that?
yeah.
Okay, so just to continue, am I okay with reading it here? Just to continue, okay. Just a quick update, the one-to-one digital learning implementation team, we did have our first meeting on April 9th. We've got our next meeting on May 8th of next week. Terrific group of educators, parents, community members, great deal of excitement in the room. So looking forward to the work of this team continuing and coming forward to you with a recommendation, a timeline currently undetermined at this point.
In regards to
Yep.
this audit update, I don't know if it's okay with the rest of the committee, if we could table this till we have the full committee here because of the costs involved and discuss it at our next meeting.
Yeah,
Sounds good to
I
me.
know, yeah, and especially where Mrs. Grimmons is the one that had, kind of brought this
Exactly,
up. I
she's not
agree
here.
that we should table this, I
So-
agree.
So I'll make a motion to table it until next meeting.
Yes.
And I'll second it.
All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, there's a vote, thank you.
Great. The Hanover Insurance Scholarship, we have two students being recognized this year, Olivia El Said and Michael Vaikunas. They'll be recognized at the Hanover Insurance is extremely generous in the scholarships that they give. There'll be a ceremony on May 21st. Mr. Hanfield and Mrs. Jarvis will be going, and I will be joining them as well, along with Olivia and Michael's family. So kudos to them. And then before we go to the next piece, there are 3 groups. We hope that we appreciate what all members of the APS team do on a daily basis, but this time of year is recognition time. So the administrative professionals were recognized on April 24th on their day. Teacher Appreciation Week starts next week for the week, with School Nurses Day being on May 8th. And as you saw this evening, when you heard from the leaders of each of our respective schools, but it really is truly a team effort that's required in order for us to be making the progress we are. So I thank each and every one of them, as well as those who may not be recognized with the Hallmark Day, I will say. Just keep going. Sure. The annual town election will take place on May 21st, and also be reminded that the town meeting is on May 7th. At both of those meetings and elections, Auburn Middle School will be a primary focus. So we're hoping that there'll be solid attendance at both. And then finally, to let you know that we received a memo from State Auditor Suzanne Bum's office. Actually, Mr. Pratt from her office is coming tomorrow to Auburn High School, and they will be looking at information regarding our physical education programs, BMI, as well as the new nutritional guidelines. So I will share with you an update after that occurs, but it's tomorrow at 11 at the high school.
Thank you. Now we can move back to our presentation for the middle school project.
Great. So I'll turn it over to, we have in attendance Mr. Eric Moore from Lamar Pagano, also is Mr. Dale Caldwell from Skanska USA, and our SBC chairperson, Mr. Mark Imsey.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Brunel. Thank you, members of the committee. I know you've had a long agenda tonight, and most of you have seen this at least twice already, so I'm I'm going to go through pretty quickly, but if at any time you have questions, just feel free to stop me and interrupt. We're familiar with the site. We're in this building here, West Street, Southbridge Street. The proposed building occupies the, kind of straddles the existing property line behind the soccer field. With the acquisition of the parcel from Masonic, there is sufficient land it's about 13 acres to support the building and the site amenities. Some of these include the multi-use field here, a smaller practice field, outdoor garden. We have two entrances, one a bus entrance located in the front, the other the student pickup and drop off in the back, and those are connected by a lobby. Buses and all traffic generally will come in from West Street, circulate around the building. Bus traffic, I'm sorry, will come in and exit this way. Parents will come in this way and circulate around the building and exit here. There's a school garden. This is a green building. This building will qualify for 2 extra percentage points of reimbursement from the state by registering with Mass Chips and achieving a score of 50. And there were some questions. We had a member of one of the committees asked, what is the value of this? And it really is, it goes well beyond a financial value. Even though there will be savings to this project, it'll be more efficient over the lifespan of the school. There's also some intangible value to it too, things like air quality and acoustics and daylighting and that sort of thing. So it's a better educational environment for all, as well as some cost savings over the life of the building. Outdoor classroom area here, small paved area near the student entrance for good weather. Parking, about 160 cars versus I think 90 right now at the Swanson Road facility. The plans, we heard Mr. Gagnon speak earlier about some of the initiatives at the middle school, and this is a manifestation of those initiatives. Things like team teaching and co-teaching and inclusion. These are there are 3 typical classroom wings, and those support the six teams at the middle school. They have special ed classrooms. They have teacher workspaces. They have 7 general classrooms, science classrooms, and then over here there's a 4th wing that this is where the Apollo 13 activities will take place. The STEM and technology workshops that Mr. Gagnon spoke about. The building's divided into public areas, community areas on the right, and academic areas on the left by this lobby, so that the one area can be shut down while the other is used. Full-size gymnasium with spectator seating, combined cafeteria, assembly space. There'll be a raised platform here with a operable partition across the front, so that area can be closed off during the day and used as a teaching space, a second music room. Upper level, very similar. Here are the other 2 team wings, media center, and then upper areas here. The typical classrooms are about 900 square feet, and that's about the size of the largest classrooms right now at Swanson Road. We heard some discussion about technology and the interactive projectors, the Epson Brightlinks projectors, and that's what we're showing here. There'll be whiteboards on both walls. You can see there's a whiteboard on this wall, and then on the opposite wall with the interactive projector, and those can be used. Either one can be used as a teaching wall. We've worked extensively with the Safety Advisory Committee on things like finish hardware and room locks, room numbering, access into the building through the main vestibule So we've had a lot of good discussions there, and we'll continue as we move forward. Several views of the building. This is from West Street as you come in, the main entrance. From the multi-use field, this is the rear of the building with the school secondary student and parent pickup and drop-off entrance. Closer view of the main entrance from West Street, and a closer view of the secondary entrance. This being the cafeteria here, and you can see some fixed seating for outside dining in good weather. Outside view of the band room on the south side of the building, and the outdoor classroom space between the two classroom wings, and this would be from the second floor. I'm not sure if you saw this at our last presentation, but this is a 3D animation. We're coming in over the Randall School and then coming in toward the main bus drop-off. Main entrance here, skylit lobby, administration and media center on the right. And this volume here is the gymnasium, locker rooms here, the band room. And then we come around here, this is a service entrance for the kitchen itself here, teacher dining, cafeteria here, secondary entrance, and this outdoor patio area at the entrance. And then as we come around here, we have the two-story classroom wings and courtyard in between with the outdoor classroom, stairwells at the corners, and science rooms in there. And we start again. At this point, if nobody has any questions, I'll turn things over to Dale Caldwell, the owner's project manager.
Well, good evening. My name is Dale Caldwell. I'm with Skanska, the owner's rep. I'll be brief as well. I'm sure you've already seen a lot of this. Just so you know, this is on the website. It was downloaded today, so it's all there, so you can go back and look at it. So again, MSBA, just to remind you, this is our partner in the project, Mass School Building Authority. Everything is approved, which I'll get in a minute with them. Project schedule, as Dr. Brunel talked about, May 7th and May 21st are the two critical votes remaining for the project. Once the project is approved, we go into full design development with the designer and all the engineers. So, so basically, we're obviously May 7th is next week, and then after the 21st, then we start in the full design. The goal here is to, within a year, have, early March, I should say, is to have the full construction documents done. So this is what we're going to build with. We have talked about bringing a contract on earlier in the project to do some pre-construction work for foundations, and there's things we can do in the fall. So there are early site packages, we can buy steel, there's a lot of things that we can do. So when you see an April construction date, we still have to sit down with Larry Bragano and kind of map it out, but our goal obviously is to be finished by August of 2015. July is when the school will be finished. The month of August you'll be moving into the building. Just quickly going through this, again, all the support, with Auburn, the school committee, as you know, was in support on April 10th. Finance committee voted on the 17th, Board of Selectmen on the 22nd, and then the MSBA up here was on April 3rd. The MSBA Board of Directors voted this project through. You have 120 days from April 3rd to vote it through, and again, we're within that targeted frame. We put this up here because we're always asked, what if it doesn't pass? What's the next step? So if it doesn't go through, there's a procedure that we have to follow through the MSBA within 10 business days. So, but again, we feel confident, and hopefully it will go forward.
Excuse me, can I just ask a quick question? I know we have placards and things in various places around the community and everything. Is that statement actually part of that display?
It is not part of the display. The display is just simply the poster boards, but in the 19 presentations that have been made, that has been part of it. Okay, so perfect. I know that it's running on local cable currently.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and so we're always asked, what's this going to cost me? So what we typically do, look at a 20-year financing bond at 3%. This is high for this economy right now. And what we're doing, I'll show you the next slide where we break it down. I'm sure you've already seen this. The $44.5 million. Auburn share, you break it down. It basically gives you, again, this is on the website, so people can go in there and see, okay, this is the house value, this is what's going to cost for the first year, second year, and 3 through 20. The reason it's broken down to year 1, year 2, and then 3 through 20 is even though the money's there, you don't borrow, obviously, the major construction until you really need it. So, again, what we do is we break it down, and this is annual costs. We break down cost per day, 49 cents a day for the project. So again, you know, whoever's watching on at their house can go on there and look and see where the house value is, and they can go through this. And again, this is at a 3% bond. So what we did here too, and it's my understanding that Auburn just received bonding at 1.859, which is phenomenal. So again, remember this is down the road here, so we're going to be somewhere in between the two. So again, based on that bonding that you just received, again, these are all the same numbers. The next slide, again, you know, people watching at home and can go online, you can see, okay, here's your house value, and it's going to cost you 44 cents a day. Again, year 1, year 2, and 3 through 20. And we also summarized it, so make it easy for you to see, here's the 3%, and here's the 1.89. And again, it's basically about a nickel a day between the two bonding rates. So the website is up and running. I think everyone's seen it and used it. And again, as we go through the project, we're obligated to put together monthly reports. So all the monthly reports be on there, all the meeting notes. We'll also probably have a webcam here where we can actually go on and you can actually see the project going forward. So again, this will stay up running for the entire project. Something that Skanska will monitor with the district. So we'll just keep updating it, and it's live and active. So the last piece of this. The question's been asked with Auburn Middle School. I know Dr. Burnell's been part of a committee, and you want me to go through this, or?
Sure. You can or I can. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, and you voted in unanimous support of it, what will happen to the current middle school based on the Auburn Public School Building Master Plan team? That school will be used as a grades 3 through 5 school, and that master plan team would begin their work again following the successful vote on May 21st, and to determine which there will be 2 elementary schools that would come offline, and that they'd come forward with a recommendation of which 2 that should be.
Dr. Burnell, if I may, through the chair, Ms. Lord, there's been a couple of questions that have been asked, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so
Sure.
please say that I'm not, great at this time to answer that. But some concerns that I'm getting is people are saying, oh yeah, we're going to get the new middle school, you're going to hit my pocketbook there, and then we're going to get the middle school, and then you're going to want money again to renovate the middle school. Now, it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, so please correct me, or please say that you're not at liberty to discuss it, but I believe that we had talked about that there was CIP money that we have not utilized because we didn't want to, put that money into the middle school,
Correct.
knowing that this was coming forward before, just waste the money and things. So
Yep.
is it true for me to say that we do have some monies put aside that we will be able to use to renovate the middle school if that's what it comes down to?
We do. So the master plan team would look at what repairs they would recommend need to be, or upgrades that need to be made there. We have purposely not spent CIP money that's been set aside for the middle school as well as for some of our other schools, waiting to see what happens with the new middle school project. So there is some funding. Whether that will pay for all of it, I don't know. It's going to depend on the master plan team's recommendation that comes forward, but we've got a substantial amount of money available for that.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to clarify that with the community.
This is probably too early to ask too, but the thing is with me is if we take 2 schools off the line, and if we sell them 2 schools, can that money be used for the debt on the new middle school?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will tell you that the question was posed to Mr. Kazanovich, that if a school building was to be sold, could the monies from that be used to renovate the current middle school? And the answer was yes, assuming there was an appropriation by town meeting.
Right.
So town meeting would need to weigh in on that, but the answer was yes, it could happen.
Okay, and that's for the renovations, but I'm talking about the total cost of the project. Say you have enough money in the CIP or close to it, you need approximately a little bit from the 2 schools to finish off your CIP for the middle school.
Yep.
And then you have all that money left over. Can we take that money?
Right.
Is it possible through town meeting process to take that money and put it into the tax that the people are paying on the new one?
No, I think it's a great question. I just hesitate to answer it definitively because I need to look to Mr. Kazanovich. I mean,
Okay.
So his response on that was yes. To me, it seems logical that it could, but I just want to pose that to Mr. Kazanovich just to be sure. But I think it would seem logical that that could happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then that brings up another question for me now. And again, this is something you would probably ask Mr. Kazanovich or the town manager. Are the buildings considered school department buildings or are they considered community buildings? So if the buildings were sold, does that go into the general town
Goes back to the
fund?
town.
It goes back to the town,
Right.
that's what I wanted to understand. Okay.
They're town buildings, but they come under the jurisdiction of the school committee. I can tell you in other communities, when the school committee no longer needs the schools, they turn them back to the town because the school doesn't want to be doing the repairs and maintenance, on an empty building or a potentially empty building. So, but it would go to the town, and that's why it would require an appropriation from town meeting if it was to be used.
So if we did take a couple of schools offline, and then we as a committee would vote to turn those buildings back to the town, is that the way that would work?
Right.
Now, does the town have the option to say, no, you can pay, you can?
No, they're town
So they're-
buildings, quite
okay.
honestly. They're town buildings
And
now.
I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I just,
because,
okay, that's.
you
Well,
know,
that's questions that I've been hearing too, and I wanted to bring it up. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure you could answer it fully, but
Sure.
you partially
I can get
answered
it.
Well,
Yeah.
the only why I say that is they would revert back to the town, or we would be responsible for their upkeep. And what I say is the town may decide there's another reuse for them
Right.
that they wanted. So,
Right.
not that they do. I'm
Right.
just saying it's
Yeah.
the town, so we'd have to appropriate to town meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
No, I understand that.
And I believe this is the last slide. This is the school committee members.
School building.
Or building, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
school building committee.
Yeah.
Sorry, not you guys.
Most of them.
Thank God we don't have that many on
Yeah,
the
right.
committee.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think
Thank you.
No, I think
No,
we're all set, thank you very much, appreciate you coming.
Through the chair, I would just like to send sincere appreciation, obviously, to Mr. Imsey as chairperson and Mr. Page as vice chairperson, but all members of the SBC who have contributed considerable time and energy to this project, which is will come to fruition, we believe, and we hope on May 21st.
you're here.
Mm.
Moving on.
So we will now move on.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very, very much.
Go.
You're all set, thank you. To unfinished business.
So I've reminded you about our meeting prior to town meeting. That'll be at 6:30 in the Auburn High School Guidance Office. That'll be this coming Tuesday evening. There was a question posed regarding the relamping and reballasting project at the high school that is part of the Green Community Grant. Those items will be recycled, so they will be recycled. And as Mr. Fahey said, they've actually outlived their life expectancy, so we got every bit out of them, but they will be recycled. The next item, my evaluation, and I left at your seats for you, 2 documents. The first one being a blank, this form here that I included. And I would say to you that I think in future years, and this would need to be a vote of the committee, we may not need this document. This is parts 1 and 3, part 2 being the goals, which I've also provided a self-assessment for you. The one change, I apologize that my self-assessment on parts 1 and 3, we did not change the heading up here. So these actually are my updates from this current school year. So the plan is with this blank document that you will complete it and return it to Mr. Laurie at the next school committee meeting, which is May 15th. So that's one document that you will need to complete. The next,
Dr. Brunel, if I
sure.
may, can I ask that you ask Elaine to email this?
Sure.
I would also.
Sure.
that
I'm
was
just a
gonna be-
horrible handwriter,
Yep.
I would prefer to type it up.
I'll email it to the entire committee
Thank you.
tomorrow. Happy to do that. So then the next piece, and I provided a self-assessment on this as well. This is the piece that is part of the new educator evaluation system. If you remember, back in the fall, I provided you what I saw as my self-assessment, and then what I did in terms of comment areas in keeping with the same format. For any that were in either the needs improvement or exemplary areas, I made some statements in support of those. But then also, I put a recommended rating for you, so you'll need to come up with a rating for each of the 4 standards. Standard 1 being instructional leadership, standard 2 being management and operations, standard 3 being family and community engagement, and finally standard 4 being professional culture. So I put in there, and that's only my self-assessment on what I would recommend, but it's up to you as a committee. I did provide for you at your seats a blank one of these, and certainly Mr. Laurie can decide. I can tell you that what other communities have done that have gone through and implemented this is actually read through each and just simply circled where it is that you as each individual member believed my performance to be. This is a massive document in terms of the number of individual elements, that being on top of all of the different criteria here, so it's an awful lot. Or, depending, what you could do is look at the standard in total. So the first one being instructional leadership, review through the different indicators and the elements, and then just simply come up with a rating. But I will need to be rated because we're actually going to be providing this to the Department of Education for all educators who were evaluated this year on this cycle in terms of their rating on the 4 standards, being exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. So you will need to come up with a rating for me.
Should we keep it the same as the other form, where 1, 2, 3, and 4? And then
you can.
Would that be easier for everyone?
I think so.
Yeah.
And then I can have,
you know.
I can crunch the numbers and we
Yeah.
have a statistical
Okay.
score.
Yep. And then finally, I provided for you the educator plan. So we had agreed on goals, and in here what I did is provided, you saw this update probably a couple of months ago, and I provided it again as the final one, and then beneath each put on there the different areas, and this is also in keeping with the Ed-Eval, whether either I did not meet, I made some progress, I made significant progress, the goal was met, or it was exceeded. In some of the information that I did not have, for example, the AP numbers, Mr. Hanfield reported those. Tonight we were waiting for registrations to come in, and actually it far exceeded even what our prediction was, so there'll be nearly 400 students taking AP classes. I mean, they may not be individual students, but 400 registrations for AP, which is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So you have homework.
Yes.
We do. And this is due back to Mr. Laurie when?
The 15th.
At the next meeting,
April.
yes.
Next year.
Yeah.
And both of those are gonna be online or emailed to us?
Yes, I will email them both to you tomorrow.
The last form, so that we're going to be filling that one out as well, and you want it 1 through 5?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So 5.
Yeah, 1 through 5.
Score it 1 through 5.
Yep.
1 through 5, I got 1 through 4. What do you 1 through 5?
I have did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met, exceeded.
That's this document, Leanne, through
That's
the
the
chair?
other blue one.
Yes.
Oh,
So that's 5
yeah.
headings instead of 4.
And that's based on the educator eval, the new model, that those are the criteria that we need to use, so,
You only need 2
Okay, I'm
lots, one
sorry,
on the
I'm
end and
like
one in the
totally
beginning.
confused now.
yeah.
There's 3 forms here.
So
You have
this
3
one we're
sep-
gonna stick to the 4.
1, 2,
Yes.
3, 4.
This one, this is the 5.
Yes.
And then this one we're gonna stick to the 4.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it, thank you.
That would be correct.
Okay.
We can move
Okay.
on. Sorry.
The school building committee update was just provided to you, and again, I reiterate my thanks to the entire SBC for their many efforts, both voting and non-voting members. It really has been a team effort. In terms of 2014 budget, as you know, we've got the town meeting on Tuesday. I did list down here for you the recommendations or votes made by the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee at recent meetings I attended. I do want to let you know that the article regarding the McKinney-Vento homeless transportation, that both boards recommended that it be held to the fall town meeting unless we get, and I did express that the committee's position, and Mr. Didi's and mine as well, they would be willing to hear this on Tuesday if we have definitive information from the state. If not, to postpone it to the fall and then to seek the funding at that time. They all did, both boards I should say, voted to support the town manager's recommendation, which for the school department is $22,320,000, with the understanding that, as Representative Frost said, the budget process is not yet completed. There are at least 2 more steps, the Senate and then going to the governor, if not for the Senate and House to pull together and make some decisions. So at this time, I'm recommending that we would not hire for 3 of the positions that you had approved in the budget. The reason being, in case additional money does not come in, we certainly don't want to be in a position that we've brought someone on board and then need to let them go. So the leadership team, we discussed this and they are in agreement with that. So we just wanted to make you aware and hopefully get your support on that.
Would you like that in the form of a motion to?
Yes. I think that would be great
amend
just
our
to
budget?
hold off. I actually wouldn't ask you to amend the budget. When I do the presentation, I'm just looking for direction for Tuesday. So I would present with all of the positions in the whole presentation to town meeting, but then make them aware that we'll hold off on hiring these positions, assuming you agree with that, until
we know the
definitive
funding
date for the
sources there.
fall. Exactly, yes.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to direct Dr. Brunel at the town meeting to hold off on hiring the following positions until such time as the fall special town meeting, where we will seek these additional funds, assuming the appropriate budget by that time. Staff
Second.
guidance, .8 library, .2 at each elementary, 1 library media special at AMS.
Great.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a unanimous vote.
Great, thank you.
And I don't, again, don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'm just curious. I see that all the articles were voted on to a 4-0. Was it the same person that?
No,
There
No,
were
there
just
were varieties.
there's only 4 people there.
There were only 4 people there, yes.
Okay, all right,
correct.
thank you.
Yep,
Okay,
very supportive,
okay.
both groups.
So we can move on to new business?
New business, the townwide cleanup sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce is this Saturday, and most of our schools have teams that will be working to clean up and beautify their school grounds. Town meeting we've mentioned, I noted the different recognition days, either just recently passed or upcoming, and then also the Festival of Arts and Technology that will be held on May 9th, a week from tomorrow, at the high school from 4 to 8. I extend an invitation to all of you and all members of the Auburn community. It is a tremendous display of our students' talents, and we are adding a STEM piece to this next week, which will be very exciting to see. So it's a terrific event, terrific event.
Do any other committee members have anything on new business? I have one briefly. This Saturday, the same day as the cleanup, but this race has been scheduled for months. The Auburn Police Association is holding its annual 5K, second annual 5K race. And the reason why I think it's appropriate to bring up is all the funds, the net proceeds in this race, go to scholarships for non-association members, kids for Auburn High School graduating seniors for scholarships. And this year we're planning several of them. Whoever, if they want to go to Auburn, apa5k.com, there's sign-ups there, or you can come at 9 o'clock in the morning, the day of the event on Saturday. The race will begin at 10, and then there's a barbecue afterwards with awards. There'll be a number of different people there to basically educate the public on things. So it's a great event, and hopefully the community can attend. Moving on to the business, and actually one more thing. Mr. Didi, is this your last meeting with us?
Through the chair, this is the last hurrah.
So I just would like to say, sitting here for almost 3 years now, what a help you've been to me to understand the dynamics of our responsibilities in regards to the finance of the district. And I think you've done an exceptional job. And as Leanne said earlier, you will be missed. And your replacement has very big shoes to fill. I just wanted to make sure I said that because I thought tonight was going to be your last meeting with us.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to fumble and stumble here for a second. It's been a privilege, and I want to thank all of you for your support. I want to thank Dr. Brunel. She's been a great team player. My colleagues and leadership team spoke about that earlier tonight. It's been a great run, and you know, I mentioned I know at some point, someplace there will always be a place in Auburn in my heart. And a quick story. This goes back to probably 1983, 84, when I was at the Gabler School in Waltham, and I was working with Dr. Philip D. Mateer, who was the principal there, was also a professor at BC part-time, and he said, Dan, someday I see you as a business administrator in a small district, and Auburn was the realization of that professional goal. So I thank all of you. It's been a privilege, and I guess I look to the sign that's behind all of us here, and Kids First, because at the end of the day, what we did, what I tried to do, was ultimately for the benefit of the students and the faculty and staff, but the students of the district. So thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
And now,
that being
move on
said,
to you.
When we assembled the packet, there were a number of items that I'm going to address here tonight that were in process. So I just want to make sure that before I begin, that you all have what I put at your desk tonight. Some of these items, there's a lot of paper. I'm seeing that. Some of these items got resolved as late as 3:30 today, but I want to get them on the agenda. So you should have, just very quickly, you should have my quick analysis on the two procurements, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Okay, and secondly, you've got the omnibus approval transfers, which I think was in your packet at the time. You've got a year-to-date budget report, which was in your packet, and what you don't have, but you do have now, is the audit report, which, again, we just resolved this afternoon, and at the time that the packet was prepared, they were still working on it. So, good to go there?
Yes.
Okay. Number one, as you know, we had two procurements. One was for the resurfacing of the track at the high school, and the second was the HVAC project at Auburn Middle School. In terms of the track at the high school, this was a rebid from last year. At that time, we had identified a sum of money, and when the bids came in, or when the bid came in, it was almost 3 times what we had anticipated. In addition to the money that was in a previous capital, there's also money in the FY 12 capital, which wasn't available at the time that we had done the bid, again, expecting a lower number. So we have since put it out to bid, and what I have prepared for you is a brief analysis. Number one, there were 9 vendors who expressed interest. Number 2, there was 1 installment of Q&A for a total of 8 questions. I issued 2 addenda to the procurement process. We did not receive a formal presence at the pre-bid opening, but I am aware of a vendor who subsequently submitted the bid, who did drive down on his own to review the area. In terms of the bid compliance, on the second page, I've identified that for you, as well as the rule of award. I am recommending to you for your vote this evening East Coast Seal Coating of Abington, Massachusetts, with a bid of $66,695. as the vendor for this project. If I may, Mr. Chair, ironically, this number is very much in line with the number a year ago, which we had not budgeted for, very much in line with the number. And then the gentleman said, as he left the room, I should have charged you $40,000 more. But so it is my recommendation to the committee to proceed forward. You will see in your packet statutorily under Chapter 149, I'm required to do a number of postings, and I've done that. In your packet, again, to meet a deadline, I have posted in next week's Central Register the award for this vendor. And you will also see in your packet a contract, and this contract was included in the bid document. I simply refined the contract once we had a vendor and once we had a definitive number, and I added a couple of other articles in there as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Are there any questions? Just one other point, Mr. Chair. In the ETA for the project is to start at or about June 24th, 2013. And the vendor needs a window of about 2 weeks from beginning to end. And the project itself, a lot of it has to do with preparing the area, protecting the area prior to doing any work on the actual track itself. So in a perfect world, if I may, I'd say by the middle of July it should be, if not sooner, that they would be complete. And that includes removing all the plastic and the tape, et cetera, et cetera. Entertain a motion?
Through the chair.
Yep.
Just one question.
I'll make the motion so you can
Okay.
second it.
You want me to make a motion?
I made the motion, you can second it.
Okay, I'll second
And then you
it.
can discuss it.
Yes, George.
Thank you very much. I know it's the only contractor that we haven't bid from. Do you know, have you learned anything about the contractor as far as how long they've been in business?
Through the chair,
What type of work that's-
yes, through the chair, there is a reference requirement, and we did make 5 reference calls that we received from the vendor. This vendor has been in business for about 30 years, and they gave us, in the IFB, I'm only asking for 3 references for projects that are equal or greater value, and he submitted 2 sheets of references, and Mr. Fahey and I as well, I looked at a number of high schools in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, and he called 5 of them, and I made calls to 2.
Excellent, thank you.
If I may too, through the chair, Mr. Fahey actually went and visited a track that this company did down in Maynard and was very pleased with the quality of the work and no overspray. And I mean, obviously that's a beautiful complex. We don't want to get it on the bleachers, the fence, or any of that, and they do all of that work, as Mr. Didi indicated. So he was very pleased.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You have a motion? Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
There's a vote.
If I may, through the chair, Dr. Brunel, what are you putting in place, or what are your plans to put in place to start to give notice to the community that, you know, that's not going to be available for?
So pending this vote,
Yep.
we're going to start putting that in the Auburn News. It won't go in for this week's edition because we've missed that deadline, but then weekly thereafter, that it'll be closed during that period, that 3-week period or so. Also, we'll be putting it on the local cable access, and we'll also remind people at our upcoming few meetings as
Okay,
well.
that'd be
We'll
great.
notify Auburn
Yeah.
Rec and Culture, so we'll be making wide-scale
Yeah.
notifications.
Great, thank you.
The next item is the middle school, the rooftop air conditioning units, and again, this number was this project is driven in large part due to some response to some of our special needs students in district. We did a project last year at Pack Jog, and the children are remaining in district are proceeding to Auburn Middle School. And as you know, town meeting reappropriated old CIP money a year ago for this project. The value for that was $27,000 and change. In our current CIP, there are additional dollars to cover this under the guise of energy management systems. So the numbers are there. And again, I'll just very quickly, it's the same format as the track project. There were 5 vendors, and on the attachment that I posted in the central register, which I'm required to do, I've listed those vendors. There was one installment of Q&A for a total of 5 questions. I did issue 2 addenda. There wasn't anyone at the pre-bid meeting. We did receive 1 bid, that is from Ace Temperature Control in Worcester. And again, in terms of the bid checklist form, they fulfilled all the requirements there. Again, I'm required to identify the rule of award. It is my recommendation to the committee to approve Ace Temperature of Worcester with a bid of $38,200. And again, as noted in the previous, the next steps would be to engage this vendor in a contract and to request from them the requisite bonds as part of the project. And again, under Chapter 149, I'm required to make all these postings public. And similar to the track, I have a deadline with the Central Register, so I posted this for next week. That this vendor is the successful vendor. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, you've got a copy of the contract. Similar contract, for the most part, except for the work and the value, to the contract for the track project. And if I may, this vendor has done a number of projects for the district throughout the years. This vendor actually was involved with the project up at Packagug last summer as well. So they're very familiar with this type of work that we were seeking.
I'll make the motion to accept the bid as explained by the business manager.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item, the omnibus approval transfer is number 3, and just as a point of reference, you may be looking at it and say, this looks a little bit different, and what I did, Mr. Chair and committee members, is that I ran a year-to-date budget report, and given the number of transfers that I had, I converted the report into an Excel spreadsheet and then worked from there. Essentially, we're looking to clean up the year as we head as we are into the month of May. I do want to make a point on the second page, that very long list of items. In essence, given the savings that we've realized in probably 50 lines there at the start, we are reinvesting those dollars into instructional technology. And as you heard earlier this evening from my colleagues, one of the big initiatives is the one-to-one initiative. And so we will take those dollars and reinvest them, if you will, back into the classroom. This is a new line item. That's why you don't see the object code. I did have that created today. So that's 1723-509. There is an object. There's another 4-digit number there, which was created today. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, I just, for the chair, if I may, on the second page, Mr. Dede, there's some very large dollars on here.
Through the chair, just as an example, the ELE tutor salaries, those dollars were there. Dr. Lozay was looking to hire some staff, I'd say, in midwinter, and that didn't materialize. I reserved those dollars in the event that she was looking to address that need. It didn't happen, and thus those dollars were made available.
Okay, then there was, it stuck out at me now.
The athletic trainer?
No, actually, I was looking at the technology piece. There's $2,500 for technology support maintenance.
Through the chair, as you know, in this year's budget, there was a new position that we put into the budget. It was funded at $10,000. That position wasn't filled probably until late fall, and given the payroll needs to date, and given the payroll needs, the projection of the payroll for the balance of the school year, there is a savings because of the very late hire of that position. And if you recall, in next year's budget, there is an additional .75, which would complement this position here for the full 1.0 for that need.
Okay. And then, Dr. Brunel, this might be addressed to you more so. Director of Technology Professional Development, there was $775. Is there something that we deprived him of?
Nope.
Or it was, no?
Nope, it was just, it's based on opportunities that are available. There were, in fact, he was at a training just this past Friday, and some of them have been at low or no cost, so it's just been a savings realized.
Okay,
Through the chair, prior to making that transfer, I did speak to Mr. Bouvier. I saw those dollars there, and I said before he scooped these dollars, and he said, that's fine, because as Dr. Brunel noted, he went, when I spoke to him, he had gone to a training that was at no cost.
Perfect.
So no cost then.
Okay.
Wayne?
I just have a couple questions on like the textbooks and stuff like that. We have all that money left over, and
Where are we now?
textbooks, Mary D. Stone, or any of, why do we have?
Through the chair, we have a system-wide textbook line. If you look to the year-to-date budget report, you'll see that there's a balance there. The principals are working with Dr. Lozay to address their textbook needs in the system-wide textbook line, and thus there was a savings in that line item there.
But we're always looking for money for textbooks and supplies and everything, and we got it all in here.
Through the chair, the items were purchased, it's just out of a different line, so the district-wide line. And if you remember, the committee actually approved a transfer to put some additional money in there. So everything that the principals have requested have been purchased.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And year-to-date budget report. Through the chair, you have there a year-to-date budget report. I ran this on April 24th, and again, I ran this prior to doing these transfers. So these transfers that you see here are not reflected in this budget report here. And the last item is the audit of the student activities account. And again, I apologize, we were working against the clock on this here. The auditors came in, I want to say the late March, and just given their schedules, we were going back and forth with the report. I received the report last week. Actually, I had the auditor back last Friday to finish the audit. So he was aware that I wanted to bring this to your attention tonight. I did speak with the Mr. Scanlon late this afternoon, as I had mentioned earlier, and he and I talked about the management response to his comments, and he accepted my response, and at this point, assuming that you approve these, and I'll get to them in a second, he'll submit to Dr. Brunel actually the final report, which in essence he'll remove draft, and then he'll also submit his letter. That being said, you have this year we did audits, and he and I agreed that we would look at both just the middle school and the high school, just given the volume of activity in those particular accounts, and they would take a quick look at the accounts at the primary level. Kind of a long story short, in the middle school, there was a variance of $430. She had more in her account than was on the town's books. In my management response to him, and he agreed that there was probably a double entry in the miscellaneous, and so we'll make that adjustment, and that will make that account whole. There's a reminder for both buildings to be more diligent in balancing their accounts each month with the bank statements. With respect to the high school, there is a variance there of $16,000 and change to the good. And what does that mean? Actually, in speaking with the auditor this afternoon, I identified a sum of money that diminished that variance, because if you look at his report, the middle school identifies the interest income, as they should. That number is omitted from the high school. So if you take the value of their interest income, that reduces that 16,000 by roughly 6,000 to about 10,000. And again, what we also found is that at the high school there were a number of accounts that were very, very old, and there are still dollars sitting in there. And as I wrote in my response to Mr. Scanlon, that I would speak to Mr. Hanfield before I leave, and recommend that either those funds stay there, or if those funds truly are dormant and they're very old, that those accounts be closed out and that a separate gift account be created for the high school and those funds be transferred to that gift account for the high school. Mr. Scanlon is aware of my game plan. Mr. Kazanovich is aware of my game plan as well. And I will probably leave a memo for Dr. Brunel at the next meeting with that recommendation. Again, I apologize that you're just getting this evening. I was hoping that we'd have a little bit sooner that you could look at it. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I'm sorry, through the chair, if I may. So this was, the audit was done. They came in back and wrote findings and recommended things. You went back to them with the management responses. So with all the management responses that are here, have you gotten feedback back from them that they agree that everything in here is?
Yes, through the chair, Mr. Scanlon and I, as I said earlier, we spoke this afternoon at 3:30 this afternoon, and he was fine with everything. What I will do is that I will forward, actually I also sent a copy late today to Mr. Gray as well. He and I were going to have a brief phone conversation, so he's aware of this as well, and he can take these recommendations and work with the buildings upon his beginning in July. If I may, Mr. Chair, I would like, if there aren't any other questions, a vote to accept these so I can go forward and we can change draft to official and get the letter. And I believe there's even an invoice coming in on Friday, which I will sign off on. And if I may, in terms of the payment, we had talked about this some time ago, probably well over a year ago, but these accounts earn interest. And because, and I show these to you in my revolving account updates, you'll see interest income. Because of the volume of dollars in the high school and the middle school, we're taking the interest earned to pay for this audit. So there is no charge to the operating, to the general fund, to the operating fund for this audit here. And I would suggest that, again, these aren't required, but every 3 years. This was actually a long time coming. He and I began discussions almost a year ago to get him in here, and just schedules just didn't work out. That you continue that practice of using interest income to pay for these types of audits.
Okay, I'll make the motion to accept the, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, sorry.
I hate to do it at this time of the night, but I just have one or two quick questions. The graduated class balances, designated, undesignated graduated class balances, is this something that you're looking to have put into that gift fund?
Through the chair, what I recommended there was that there be a process in place. And as I wrote in my management response, ironically, I began a process prior to Dr. Brunel's arrival where we would take those old fund balances and return them to the class president treasurer. Ironically, what was happening at that same time was that the press box committee was beginning their work of soliciting those classes for those old funds. And as I explained in my management response here in writing and to the auditors when they were here, I thought it would be real confusing if on the one hand I'm saying we're giving you money back, and then on the other hand we've got a group saying to them, you know, there are dollars there, may we use them as a gift. That being said, the press box project is 99.75% complete, I believe. Those funds have been dedicated for what needs to be for the press box. I believe the value of those old account balances is $31,000 and change. The additional dollars required for the lift are coming out of the press box gift account of roughly $1,400 for the total of $33,000 and change. That being said, and again, I have a process already in place that I will share with Mr. Gray, and he'll probably come to you at some point, maybe in the fall, in terms of taking those old class balances and getting them off the town's books, because they shouldn't be there much beyond 3 years, and returning them to the class treasurer and president, and that's standard practice.
That was my only concern, making sure that the funds were designated for what those graduating classes wanted them for. And after 3 years, I guess, we're not going to go back for them after 3 years. Is it?
Well, I'm going to recommend to Mr. Gray, and he can come forward however he sees fit. But there are a number of ways of looking at it. Some districts keep the monies on the town's ledger for 6 months after the class graduates, in case there are any invoices that have to be paid. And then once that six month window comes to a close, say in December, there's a check cut by the treasurer to the class president. I'm not talking here in Auburn, just in general now. And those fund balances become the responsibility of the president and the treasurer of that class, wherever that class might be.
Should we have a specific protocol to handle that exact situation so that every year it's not changing, especially with the new business manager coming in? Should we have something in place?
Through the chair, I'm happy to submit something to Dr. Brunel for the next meeting. I won't be here to speak, but I'll certainly speak to Dr. Brunel and give her a recommendation sheet to you relative to that. And frankly, I can resurrect, if you will, what I started almost 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, I'm not looking for anyone to do extra work. I just don't want 3 years down the road someone coming back and saying, where is my money, and it becoming a legal obligation.
Sure. If I may, through the chair, so Mr. Didi will present that in writing, and then when the new business manager, Mr. Gray, comes on board, for us to discuss it and bring something to you in the fall, a recommendation on how to go forward with that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for everything.
You need a vote?
Please.
Someone would like to make a motion?
No, I'll make the motion to accept the Auburn Middle School Student Activity Fund audit report and the Auburn High School Student Activity Fund audit report as written.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. No, thank you. And we can now move on to policies, I believe.
Yes. There are 2 policies before you for second reading, the meal charge policy and Auburn wellness policy. And you'll note that the meal charge policy, those references have been added to it as discussed at our last meeting. So it is my recommendation that you approve them both.
I make a motion to approve policy EF meal charge policy on second reading.
You want to bundle them both together?
And a motion to approve the updated wellness policy on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
The next item that the committee had asked me to look into from the last meeting was the 80% Auburn composition rule. So actually, there were a number of us that looked into this, Mrs. Zotner most notably. So what I've provided for you are several documents. I'll just go through them very quickly. The first is a policy, KF, community use of school facilities, that was first approved back in 2006, which would have been during Dr. Helene's tenure. Next, accompanying that is policy KFA, which actually outlines the Auburn high school field use. That was likewise, this one was actually in March of 2008, which would have been during Dr. Allen's tenure. Policy KFAB was also approved in May of 2008, again, under Dr. Allen's leadership. The next one is the fee schedule, which, as you note, has been updated occasionally over the years. This is just the process that we go through, the application for use of facilities. And then most pertinent to this is the school committee minutes of the December 4th, 2006 meeting, at which there was a vote taken. If you go to page 3, I marked it with an asterisk. It was a vote made by Mrs. Gribbins and seconded by Mr. Page. The vote being 4 in favor, 1 against, and that's where it notes the 80 to support the Oversight Committee's recommendation. And that also notes that to be considered an Auburn group, that it be composed of at least 80% of Auburn youth and or residents. And then the final piece provided was actually notes from the Pappas Committee fee recommendations, it's titled, that this was actually the recommendation from this committee that's referenced in the minutes of December 4th, 2006. So I share all of that with you as background information, but my recommendation, and obviously this will be a discussion of the school committee, that should you either agree on the 80% or a different percentage in order to constitute an Auburn group, I'd like to recommend that the policy KF and likely KFAB as well actually include that percentage, because that way, just to update it so it's a little more obvious to people. And that's after your discussion.
What I'll say is, obviously because I was approached, and that also Dr. Brunel was approached, I personally would like to see it be if 50% of the team is from Auburn, that there be no fee. I would put an amendment to that if there are teams in Auburn that have 100% of the student athletes are Auburn residents, that they would get first right to the field, beginning of the seasons when people are scheduling. But if the fields are open, and in this case, what this coach was saying, Mr. McCune, that the field's open. There's no one on it. There's no high school kids, no Auburn youth. They practice 1 day a week in Leicester, and I think there's like 53% of the team actually.
That's my understanding, yes.
It's from Auburn, so they wanted to make it convenient for Auburn so they wouldn't have to always go out to Leicester. So that's why I brought it up to you, and I agree it probably should be put into the policy.
I agree too.
And I'd be happy to, I would say, to make an amendment that obviously if there's a youth team that's 100% Auburn, that they, that be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
So I think we need to put this on as an agenda item to talk about this, because I think if we're looking at.
It is an agenda item through the chair.
Oh, you want to do it now? Oh,
I would.
Oh, you want to discuss it now?
This team couldn't practice for the last 2 weeks in Auburn because we tabled it to today. That's why we put it on the agenda.
Okay, yeah.
So I'd like to tell him, or Dr. Brunel to tell him, you can't use our field unless you pay us $250 an hour, or you can use the field.
So your recommendation, as chairman, is to do it 50-50?
At least 50% of the team, minimum.
And then if it's 100%, then they have preference over the rest. That's what you're looking at.
Correct. I mean, if the team 50-50 has a scheduled time, I think they should be able to use it. I'm saying when they do schedule the fields, that be taken into account, that the teams that have 100% of their athletes are from town, they should have first right to the field.
I'd make a motion to that effect, the 50-50 and the 100%.
I'll second that for discussion. Yeah, I agree with that. My concern is how far ahead do they schedule the fields? In other words, I want to make sure that the teams that are 100% Auburn children don't lose out because someone scheduled the field as soon as the day that the fields were able to be scheduled, however that works.
I saw it, I think I saw in one of the policies, it was like 14 days, wasn't it, Mary Ellen? And
I don't,
Bob.
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and actually look. I think in order, through the chair of priority, any school groups automatically get preference, and then there's the rec and culture, which is obviously for Auburn residents as well, so there's a delineation. I think that would be an issue that would want to be sure that we somehow addressed in here, though. So that we're not having someone sign up for it now for next spring when other Auburn groups may not have created their schedule. So I understand your point.
And I think that should be part of the motion, that that it has to be, you know, it's a season, each season is when they can approach, and Auburn has first right.
I'll add that to my motion.
To ensure that Auburn has, our Auburn Youth Leagues, if they need the field back.
Definitely. I'll add that to the motion. It's been seconded.
So you agree with it, okay?
No, we get the vote.
So there's a motion and a second, yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at some of the paperwork here, like this KFA. Is this just a sample? Because, I mean, it talks about the baseball field from March 2008 through June of 2009. So this is just a sample of it. That's being updated as we...
What we did is we pulled the original documents, so you see KFA, but then if you look on the back side, so that I think was created initially when the field's open, and then the next page actually outlines what you've put in place so far. So now the baseball field is by permit only. There's a $50 lighting fee, the site management charge, and that, which is, it's not date specific. Those are in place for all.
I understand. I understand. Okay. All right. So if we implement this new piece, do you still require people to fill out an application to use the facility even if they're not being charged?
Oh, absolutely.
Then maybe that statement should be put on the application somewhere. I mean, not only should it be incorporated into the policy.
Very good idea.
But maybe it needs to be put on the application.
So they understand.
So they understand that it's a, you know, I don't know what we want to use for wording, but that it's seasonal and that, you know, the schools have first dibs and then 100% Auburn groups have next in line, and then
50-50.
And then it's the 50-50. So maybe, I mean, I know there's not a lot of room on this form because there's a lot of stuff already on here, but maybe somewhere on here it can be noted if this has to be filled out.
Through the chair, we've actually met as a group, high school and some central office administrators, about trying to revamp this form so that it better serves our needs as well. So based on the input that you're providing, I'm assuming you want me to update these documents and bring it back for the May 15th meeting. Is that correct?
Well, I think we can make the motion.
Oh, no, you can make...
We can make the motion
Yep.
and vote on what, you know...
What we want to add.
What Jeff is asking us to do, but we need to clean up our documents.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm saying, so that you're gonna want me to go back with these, okay.
Through the chair. My concern earlier when I was speaking was that I know it's per season or by the season, but when the season opens up, let's say in April, when we first start to take the applications, I guess my concern was that I don't want we'll call them the 50% team to come in on day one, the first day, and schedule every practice for a month, because that day, whoever's in charge of the Auburn teams, the 100% Auburn leagues, may not be able to get there. So I'm thinking, should we maybe have a grace period? You can certainly put your application in, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to.
I think that's fair, that that they have the outside, the team that has 50% or more, they have to understand that Mr.
100%.
Garno is going to reach out to
Right.
Auburn Youth Sports, Parks and Recreation, and Auburn High School and Middle School to say, listen, this group wants to practice on our field on Wednesdays.
And
Is-
so be
Is
it.
it open?
Yeah.
So that they can know they may have to pick Tuesdays. you know.
With the message being, make sure that you're not just securing these fields so that you'll have them.
They need
and
to
they're gonna sit
right.
empty. They're gonna sit idle.
Yeah, right.
You want-
Just for clarification, do you want it to state on here, since we're gonna be reviewing these, that approval may be rescinded should in Auburn High School or an Auburn Public Schools team or a team that constitutes 100%, that they could be,
That would cover you.
notified with ample notice or
Yeah.
something?
I think so.
I don't like the idea of rescinding unless it was an Auburn school team.
Well, that's what you're saying, right?
Mhm.
But not, I hate to speak out against my own little league, but no, we need to plan accordingly
Yeah.
and ahead of time. But
Yeah.
it's different with the high school. Those sports have to go on. These games
Right.
count
No,
in the district, and they need to have them played. So I would definitely say, as far as the schools themselves, yes, that it can be rescinded. But otherwise, I think that the youth leagues need to make the appropriate arrangements so that they'll have enough fields for what they have to do. And for a lot of them, there are no playoffs, so they're not going much further. I mean, obviously the upper levels they're at.
Okay.
I was just looking for a time frame. Let's say we start accepting these applications on April 1st. Well, let's give the town until April 7th to get their work done. Even though I know that they work hard at it and they work all winter long on figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
Just in case things happen, they may not be able to get in there on time.
So you want that part of the motion?
Bless
I
you.
don't know, it's gotten so
I know.
intricate now, I don't know exactly
I-
where I would go with it.
I mean, I would just say that, the motion would be that Auburn High School has first rights to the fields, and that town teams that are made up 100% Auburn kids with in Parks and Recreation would have their second right.
Preference.
And that basically would be seasonal, that they would have to, with the understanding that the team made up of 50% or greater of Auburn kids, would have to understand that there would be, we could say, a 14-day grace period where you may get contacted because an Auburn team needs that field.
Right.
And when it comes down to what he's saying about it could be end of the season, yes, that they need to understand and be flexible, that if there's a playoff game for Auburn High School and they need to utilize the fields,
Make it preference.
make a preference.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yes.
Does that mean?
Well said.
It does. It
No,
does.
that's the motion.
And then basically to add what Leanne said,
Yep.
that the form reflect
Yeah,
that.
Okay.
So they're aware that basically they're signing almost a contract saying they understand that.
Okay.
So we got a motion, we need a second, right?
So let's see, if you want to
Yeah, I just made the motion.
make the motion.
And we need a,
I'll second that.
and now you need a
Further
vote.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a vote.
The final policy for your review, and this one being on first reading, is student fees, fines, and charges, policy JQ.
I make a motion to approve the policy as written on first reading.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's a vote. Moving on to personnel.
We have a job description for school nurses that they have provided input for, and it is my recommendation toward, I should say, that this be approved.
Make the motion to approve the job description for school nurse as recommended by the superintendent.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye is a vote. I believe we do need to go into executive
We
session.
do, and there is a small slip of paper at your seats that describes it.
Is that
Only
this?
to adjourn,
Is
to
that this?
return to adjourn.
This one here?
Let me see.
You think George is all ready to go?
Yes, but just take off superintendent.
Just take off superintendent.
Just take off superintendent.
I make a motion to go into executive session for MGL Chapter 30, Section 21-2, to discuss negotiation strategies with regard to non-union personnel, including the business manager, cafeteria workers, to return to open session only to convene.
I'll second.
And we'll need a roll call.
Okay, Mrs. Gibbrey?
Yes.
Mrs. Scobie?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
And Mr. Laurie?
Yes.
Before we adjourn, goodbye, Dan. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good night, everyone, and good luck, Dan.